Hello and welcome to Titan Esports, where the competition never pulls its punches. Tonight, it's going to be GCS Cream Corn squaring up against Summit Esports Fr3nzy. It's a showdown, and it's going to get messy in the riff. I'm your host for the evening, Korak, joined today by Mr. Anti. Hello and welcome.
Hello. I am doing quite well myself. It is missed, by the way. But that being said,
I apologize. I'm sorry.
No, it's all good. We're getting the draft on the way. It's been a hot minute since things started up. We've had everything kind of breaking here and there. So that being said, we're bound to have some very, very fun games. Now, one of the things that I really do like to see with the lower level leagues, don't get me wrong, these are obviously some very talented players, but since we're not playing at the top of the echelons, right, these are some players that are much more focused on what their comfort is rather than just, hey, what's meta right now. We get to see some comps that are based off of what do we know how to play, what do we like to play, what do we want to make work, and we're going with the Sion straight up. Now, I'm not sure if this is actually first pick Sion or if that's just, Sion was the top laner. If we do see a top laner immediately in response with top laner jungle, I'm guessing it's just everything in order already. Okay, so I am guessing it's order already, but either way, Sion, Yorick, two very solid champions to throw up in that top lane. You got the side laning from the Yorick to make sure that Sion never gets a chance to leave, and you've got so much tankiness from the Sion to make sure that if you do ever get a chance to leave, the team will have so much security standing directly behind you.
Absolutely, and I was going to mention it when you were talking about comfort picks and the skill level. Amumu fares really well right in this range, and if I remember correctly, this is about from the platinum to emerald level, right around that area, so I'm not real surprised. Amumu was very good here, and he's a very comfortable pick. I'm not surprised by that. Once again, going into Sion, Sion's really great at playing from behind. Both are turned into these raid bosses early in, and then we actually do have a bit of meta mixed in here. Sylas is not as meta as you would normally used to see him, at least in the past, but he still made a decent showing, even in the support role, which in my opinion is a lot like Elise, which you got to get all your value early on. We'll get to see if that works out. I suspect this is going to be a mid Sylas, and then we go from that immediately into a meta pick, which of course is Zen, very strong for a million different reasons.
Yeah, I mean, whether it be on his release, whether it be on his rework, Xin Zhao will still forever remain win now. That champion does it absolutely all. He has the gap closers, he has the damage, he has the gank setup. He just has everything that you could ask for in a champion. In the meantime, Sylas, as you were saying, not quite as meta nowadays as we have seen in the past, something that we usually see a lot more in the jungle nowadays, but with Xin Zhao already picked, it's very likely it's just going to be slammed directly into the mid lane, and considering the fact you got a Mumu ult to steal, that's a very solid decision there. We've got the Morgana here, and I'm pretty certain that it's not going to be the Senna mid lane, so I'm a little bit excited to see how they do round out this composition right now, especially that you got the Kog'Maw on the other side. What in the world are we seeing? Okay, so I kind of see what they're cooking. I'm pretty sure it's Morgana mid, Senna AD carry, and they're just going to be swapping the players around a little bit. But if it was going to be that Senna mid, I would have been completely baffled. I mean, just gonna throw away the Senna soul stacking passive just for funsies, but no, instead we are going to be getting the Senna Leona to make sure that you can pressure the Kog'Maw Milio early game, but also more importantly, you're getting the Milio to make sure that Kog'Maw has even more range, even more damage, and even more survivability.
Absolutely, and Milio is such a great pick into this, into the Leona, into the Amumu, into the Morgana. It's just a perfect pick, and I love to see Milio get played. He's so fun, and I think he's got a really entertaining kit. A lot of people claim that he's super easy, and he definitely can be, but I think his skill ceiling is a bit higher than people make him out to be, even though he does seem relatively simple. Morgana is someone I've seen in mid quite frequently. She is a lot stronger than I expected her to be, especially because I feel like it's been a little bit since she has been in the mid lane. But I'm excited to see it here. I think it's a good pick. I like both of these teams, and I can really see where they're going on each side. And CC is the name of the game for at least one of these teams, while the other side is looking at a little bit more meta. I would argue that Kog'Maw's not as meta. He really, really struggles, especially in these early games, and I'm a little worried about him into Senna, especially because Senna's going to have a lot of time to start to range and build up a lot of her abilities. But Kog'Maw at some point is a lot like Gwen, where just suddenly you flip on a switch and you're like, oh, it's Kog'Maw, and then he destroys your whole team.
Yeah, I mean, there have been so many metas out there where it all just falls down to, hey, what if we just go Juggernaut? And you just have a Kog'Maw, you put all the gold, all the experience, all of the damage onto this Void Puppy, and it absolutely wrecks house. Kog'Maw, a champion that you have to be worried about each and every moment of the game. Yes, the early game is the much weaker section of Kog'Maw, but if you see an accelerated Kog'Maw, things get so much more tough. And much more importantly here, the Milio means that Kog'Maw gets a chance to do anything that he wants to do, especially with Fr3nzy piloting this Kog'Maw. It should be very interesting to see what it does turn into. In the meantime, mid lane with that Morgana, it's barely going to be a concern for both teams because it's very much a neutralization lane, right? We've seen Morgana being picked up multiple times in the past as a mid lane counter into champions like LeBlanc, into champions that really want the lane to be as bloody as possible, but instead, you know, we see the Morgana say, yes, I'm just going to make sure you can't actually all in me. I'm just going to walk away. If you gank me, I'm immune to CC. There's really not much you can do here, but level 2 starts it all off.
Leona going in, going to find an angle directly on Milio, but it looks like Fr3nzy is going to return it with a good amount of damage, and look at that. Senna already down to about half HP and even less, taking another shot right there from Fr3nzy. This is exactly what we want to see in these early skirmishes. I thought Senna was going to be more of a bully, but that Milio is so powerful, especially with that early on Kog'Maw.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the time we do see Senna getting this early bully damage off here, but Fr3nzy has so many of these shots landing exactly where they need to. In the meantime, one missed skill shot from Stran early on means that he doesn't get the damage that he wants on this Senna. He doesn't get the lockdown. He doesn't get a real way how to make sure that Kog'Maw is actually in trouble. There are no summoners burned, nothing ventured, nothing gained. But remember, it is heal barrier on the side of the Senna Leona, so it's not like you have any kill pressure into this Kog'Maw Milio bot lane. A lot of times it's just all about getting as much gold as you can, as consistently as you can, and oh my lord, we're going all the way under tower here.
Okay, Sion into Morgana, decent trading back and forward, and the sad B comes out in the mid side as we're getting the top laners duking it out. Once again, I don't expect to see a lot here in the early game. Even if Sion dies, he really doesn't care too much. Although I think York getting fed might be scarier than Sion getting fed, but that's a tentative maybe here, Anti.
Yeah, I mean, definitely going to agree with you there, Korak, but look at this gank.
Sad Mummy coming in, looking for an angle. He does have two bandages to make their way in. Gonna buy plenty of time to get there and deal a good chunk of damage. He's definitely overstayed his welcome. First bandage coming down. There's the flash there on Yorick, but Amumu is not done just quite yet. He has one more bandage. He's gonna go in, take a tower shot, and get so close to taking out the Yorick. Yorick is now down a flash, but he does have a TP, and ultimately he's forced to back thanks to the Amumu, and that shows how powerful Amumu is in these early games. Having double wrap is always one of those things I find absolutely insane over here. Bubbles trading decently into Sion. Sion really struggling with that black shield. Something I wanted to point out here is I feel like in a couple of ways, Morgana serves a similar role that Galio does, sort of being an anti-mage. Unfortunately missing the dash there on that end, but Morgana's going to take a healthy amount of damage and has to be super careful. They both have TP, so they should be able to back here soon, and Morgana should be able to farm at range, but that is still a very scary Sylas.
Yes, I mean, Strategy Time Silas has been such a big concern for Bubbles in that mid lane, but now that Bubbles has a little bit of AP under his belt, has the ability, I'm guessing 3 points in that W, should be able to start one-shotting these waves. Silas has lost his real window of actually getting a kill onto this Morgana, barring any jungle interference. In the meantime, it's still going to be farming on farming in this bot lane. Milio and Cog make it very difficult to make things happen, but Rich coming on in for that jungle interference I was talking about.
Game Destroyer going to pop their way onto Dark Frenzy, trying to buy time for Stam to get out. The dodge does happen there, but still, Rich is directly on top of the Senna, flashing forward. About 2 more shots. Barrier is finally popped, but it's enough once again for the Senna to escape. I really like what Game Destroyer did. They knew that they were going to be able to catch up to the Zen, so they occupied the Kog'Maw and the entire team, and then just was allowed to walk away. That shows the power of champions like Leona. Alistar's a good pick for that one too, because even though they don't necessarily have escape, they have so much beef in this early game to kind of just be able to walk out of there.
Yeah, and more importantly than just it being Leona, it's specifically the Glacial Augment. By going in on Bravo and Dark Frenzy there, it slows up the bot lane, make sure that they can't actually follow up on that gank. And when you got one Senna running away from a Xin Zhao, it becomes much easier going to get the rotation on the Dragon here, and we're getting a big fight going.
Ooh, Stratty having to blow a flash in order. Oh no, actually just blowing a dash. I thought he blew a flash, but no, he's got his dash down and a flash still ready and available. But it looks like at this point GCS has the angle. They are prepped here to start this fight. Bravo does need to be careful, but at the very least they can clear out a ward. Although I'm not sure I would risk it. Drake going down about half HP as it looks like Zen's given this up completely, and I don't really blame him. Giving up first Drake isn't the worst thing, especially because I think Void Grubs are a lot more important in these early games. Especially if you can get in on Senna and Sion. Void Grubs work so well on that side, so I wouldn't be surprised if we're going to get some posturing here for SEF to grab those Void Grubs.
Yeah, and one of the big things about these Void Grubs, right, is the one thing that we are worried about is this Yorick getting fed, right? And Yorick, one of the strongest abusers of Void Grubs in the game, because this champion does not care. If you are 0-10 or 10-0 as Yorick, you're still not grouping up. You're still walking down a side lane and taking as many towers in sight as you can. So right now, it's going to be all about whether or not these Void Grubs go to GCS or SEF. But in the meantime, mid lane's still just going to be trade on trade on trade. Mana is the one thing that these two are actually looking to deplete because the health bars are not going down.
And Sion showing how absolutely annoying he can be. He's had plenty of nerfs, I think, in the past, but he's still this absolute tanky, health regenny monster, even into Morgana's Spell Shield, and that Spell Shield is not a cheap ability there, Anti. And we're seeing that here in the mid lane. Game Destroyer did do a little bit of rotation over here. They're looking for a spot to go in on Strategy Time, but looks like Strategy Time's going to go in on Morgana before that. And unfortunately, Milio actually stopping as we get a little bit of engagement on top of Milio, going back and forward right up there. Bravo taking a good chunk of damage, but most importantly, I think keeping Leona, keeping Game Destroyer off of Strategy Time provided them the much needed breathing room, and now those Void Grubs are open for them. They just need to get control of the banana bush, and they should be fine. This should be their objective.
Yeah, and most importantly, that Hijack picking up the highest value ultimate in the game right now. A Mumu ult is something that you absolutely cannot contest when your mid laner has to recall, doesn't have the teleport to get back to lane, just doesn't have the mana in order to contest this. And all of a sudden, we have Yorick with 3 Grubs. Yes, we are going to be seeing Sen Papi take a plate up in that top lane, but
Dark Frenzy
here we go.
Catch a Leona directly to face. The one stun does come down, but it looks like Strand is not going to be able to follow it up too much as Leona takes a bunch of shots there at the end. However, he's got to watch out because the kit for Leona should be up here soon. So if he steps forward again, Strand might be in range in order to deal a lot there with the Kog'Maw. And Kog'Maw is typically someone you have to watch out for. A Hexatech flash going to come in. So far, Bravo has not noticed the stun going to come down. Morgana looking for an angle, but it looks like she's not going to take it. So far, she does finally go in. Glacier going to pop their way off, but Strand Fr3nzy has to completely back off. I'm not sure why they're so afraid of this fight. That was such a good angle for them to go, but Leona going to take a massive amount of damage and just sort of having to make the walk of shame backwards Game Destroyer, just not having the follow-up that they think they need. I don't really blame them, but I feel like they could have done a little bit more there, Anti. Speaking of, Rat gonna come in, gonna pop their way on to Dark Fr3nzy, but that's gonna show once again the power of Melia, the power of all of their shields and their ultimate, absolutely nullifying Amumu. Anybody else, any other supports, they would have been dead in the bot lane.
Yeah, any other supports would not have been able to get that Amumu off there, but in the end, it is going to be that ultimate just to make sure that Amumu can't actually get the free double kill. And as you were saying earlier, right, it looked so good for the side of GCS. It looks like, you know, an all-in, a 2v1 onto a lone Kog'Maw. But then you take a look at the items, right? So that is the components for a Blade of the Ruin King from Dark Fr3nzy. We're getting ever closer. At the time, we only were sitting on that Vamp Scepter, so still a decent bit of that survivability slash damage. But if you look on the other side, it was just the Phage, right? It's just a little bit of damage, a little bit of move speed. But the thing is, when it's a Senna early on into the game with fleet footwork, you are never ever going to be able to match a Kog'Maw in terms of the 1v1 damage. Flash burned away on that top side, a little bit overly greedy for that power plate, gonna lose your maiden for it, but in the end it's just a matter of understanding your limits and making sure that you can actually go in without any regrets.
We're actually getting a word. Apparently, we have a prediction going on when First Blood's going to happen. If it's going to happen before the 15-minute mark, and I was going to say that it was going to for sure happen before the 15-minute mark. A lot of these lower ranking games end up being a bit spicy, which is one of the reasons I really enjoy them. There's a lot of early action where some of the higher elo games, they truly go back and forward, decent trading back and forward. Morgana having a lot of control. However, Rich going to come in looking for some sort of angle. The dodge is going to be really important, and yes, they're able to get it, but it doesn't matter because Zen's still able to go in, get a knock up there on Bubbles. Q gonna come out, but unfortunately not able to grab one, and the wraps are ready. Mumu waiting just around the corner, mirroring Rich there. And we're gonna get another Drake here in a minute too, Auntie.
Yeah, and just like that, Korak, it's the exact thing that we were talking about earlier, right? Morgana is such an amazing neutralizer. Just plops down that W, just heals up off of that wave, that spell vamp just doing so much work for that champion there. Just going to be very difficult for them to get any real meaningful trades off in. We were saying, is it going to be before 15 minutes? I would absolutely take over 15 minutes. Neither of these teams wants any kills to go through. Neither of these teams say, I need to snowball. They just say, I need some sort of way to make sure that I can just take it very slow, scale it to the late game, and go for these team fights, right? You have an infinitely scaling Senna on one end. You have Kog'Maw on the other side. You have a Scion that will be infinitely scaling on a GCS's side. You have Yorick, which will never ever let that Scion leave the lane on the other, right? Both of these teams say, if we get to that late game, we'll be more than fine. But right now, as we can see, it's just very quick, short trades on both sides that are essentially amounting to nothing.
I've got to say here for Game Destroyer, this has got to be a pretty devastating lane phase because they've had plenty of good stuns back to back, but Melee has really just been countering, whether it's with the barriers, which I think people forget how powerful those are. Speaking of, a Game Destroyer going to go in, find their way onto Dark Fr3nzy, going to follow shortly behind a Mumu. Mumu actually going to get a decent ultimate off as the ultimate from Strad going to come out and deal a decent amount of damage, but once again, those shields are so powerful as another, I think that's the second gank was just unsuccessful. However, Strady Time going to try to find an angle in. Unfortunately, he's just not going to have the damage, missing the lunge forward, and really just an absolute nothing burger here in the bot lane despite the constant ganks. They're really just teasing me here with all of this back and forward.
It's all appetizers and no main course to be found. We are starving over here, and right now, Stride Time might be coming over to that mid lane, but remember, Morgana still has Black Shield, Morgana still has that pool, and it's maxed out. It's so difficult to actually knock this champion out of lane. Now, Bubbles is gonna back, has the ability to pick a fully completed boots. You're gonna be even tankier as you get back into lane, teleport right back, be able to contest anything on the map that you so desire. Instead, going to just be opting for a little bit more AP so you can just one-shot all of these waves. And even
looks like
with
we're shaping up for a rumble into the jungle as Rich is taking on the sad mummy, going down about half HP. Good damage back and forward. However, he's got to watch out for Morgana coming over the wall, looking for the Q. The defensive ult's going to come down, but Strategy Time's going to go in, deal a good chunk of damage, saving Zen, and now going to turn his attention to the Morgana, but Morgana's not going to allow it to happen. First blood finally happening just before the 15-minute mark. Game Destroyer going in, and unfortunately not able to get the stun as Strategy Time struts his way out of there with the first blood.
Yeah, and the commentator's curse coming in clutch there. We did have a little bit of a fight starting up in live, but let's just look at this one more time, right? Where Oberon just decides, all right, I am just going to take this blue buff. I have the rotation from my mid lane. This should be fine. Every time that Shin autos me, I get another chance to hit my E. It's just so much damage as we continue, especially with that Triumph proc coming through, sorry, Conqueror. But in the end, when you have the mid laners just completely in the right spots, Morgana's a neutralizer. We've said this so many times. You don't do that much damage on the Morgana, you're not going to be able to match the Silas roam. And in the end, the Amumu does go down as we get even further into the match. Still only 1 kill on the board, but it doesn't need to be a bloody game for it to be an exciting one.
Senpai might be in a little bit of trouble as finally that top tower is going to go down, and they are a little bit isolated, but it looks like Zen's going to go for the T2 instead of taking a fight. And I don't really blame them. The objectives are going to be so important. You know, you've mentioned before, Auntie, how these players are really just trying to feel things out, just trying to play things out, and there's a lot of safe plays, and I think that's going to continue, and I think that's a good strategy here for the early on for the beginning game. Morgana, or got to watch out for it. Strategy Time almost going to get stunned there, but that does mean such a powerful ult in the hands of Leona is down for the time being. Game Destroyer really struggling here with this one, and it looks like that was the first feat was Tower 1. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, first feat in the game, going to be around 15-ish minutes. But in the meantime, you know, as anticipated, it's still Yorick in that side lane, continuing to push it out. It's still mid lane being constant push on push, and the spell immune comes on through.
The ultimate, we're going to get a Morgana ult directly into a Morgana ult Stratty. Really struggling here into the Morgana, just not able to do too much, but he's got to watch out for the stun. The stun's going to come down, and Morgana just maybe, wow, come on, man, just walk up 1 AA, 2 AAs maybe, but maybe they're worried about the range on that side. Either way, they're really constant appetizers, just like you mentioned. However, Game Destroyer might be in a little bit of trouble. Rich is here for the gank. They get spotted with the ward, though.
Yeah, in the meantime, Strategy Time still holding on to this mid lane. Really wants to make something happen.
Trading back and forward, but going to catch a Q directly to the face as York continues to push. And Mumu coming around for another gank, trying to tie things up. He's going to go directly onto the Maiden. The flash comes out into the safety of the minion wave. Sion's able to knock a couple of them out. Rap should be in range, but unfortunately, no, it catches a minion. Sion gonna crash directly into the arena, which is not what you want, but this might be just another time that Rap should be up. And yes, indeed, it is, as finally the York might go down, as finally Maiden might get taken out of this equation, and we're gonna get a kill in the top lane. Who's it going to fall to? Unfortunately, Senna just not able to follow it up with too much, but I guess that's on the other side. Might have been a little unnecessary, but at the very least, Sion has a healthy amount of gold and can hopefully use that to tidy things up in the top lane.
Yeah, and just like that, we've evened up the kill counts. Not quite yet evened up in terms of the gold, but everyone wants to get involved here, right? It's so many appetizers. We're sick of all the bread. We want the main course. Where is the pasta? As right now, Strategy Time, once again, looking for even more trades in the mid lane.
And both mid laners are so infuriating to gank. Morgana's next to impossible because of all the neutralization. You know, we've got so many dashes here on Strategy Time. It's just absolutely frustrating. And Amumu's really been posturing for as many ganks as he can possibly get his hands on, trying to make something happen. But just, I think it shows how well these team comps have really boiled down. There's plenty of times where we should have had first blood, I think, pretty early on, but just the team comp did not allow it.
Yeah, did not allow it whatsoever. But in the end, this is literally one of the most even games that you could have asked for. Look at the CS, look at the gold, look at the items on both sides. Yes, you do have feats on the side of Summit Esports Fr3nzy. But on the other side, GCS have managed to pull up a very solid, repertoire of items of champions that scale literally infinitely, right? I mean, there are champions that we say are unbelievable scalers, but there's really not much you can do in comparison to champions that will never stop gaining stats. Senna will never stop getting more attack range. Sion will never stop getting more tanky. And in a game like this, extra attack range in order to match something like the Kog'Maw is huge. Extra health, so that way you can sit there in the middle of a cornfield and get
in a little bit of
slammed
trouble
by
there
this.
in the top lane. Finally, that black shield is not enough as she has just such a small sliver of HP as Rich finds the angle, picks up a kill, and now Otacon is on the menu. Finally, our waiter has noticed that we're sitting at a table and they've delivered our first entree here, Auntie.
Yeah, Otacon is going to blow this game wide open with the amount of experience that it adds onto the team. And I was talking about how we're just getting, a wet noodle fight in this bot lane, but here we go. A little bit more interruption.
Oh, Mumu coming in, unfortunately missing a super easy wrap on his end. However, I don't think they really needed it as Senna able to provide a decent amount of shield. And once again, Sion picks up a kill, but this time in the bot lane as the pressure continues on the top because we got a full rotation as support and ADC have rotated their way over. Actually, not there. It is Mileo. Okay, yeah. The rotation here was a little confusing. We've got one going mid and we've got one going top. So Morgana going to do a little bit of 1v2. Same thing on the other side. Rich going to find an angle there on Morgana, but not going to want to take it because that's an immediate stun. A little bit of a Modine BM on their side, and Stratum missing a stun there on Stratty Time. But Stratty Time does need to be careful. This is a lot of range on Senna. She's got to have a decent amount of stacks at this point, I've got to imagine.
Yeah, I mean, the stacks is one thing, but also take a look at that item build, right? That Phage is the first item that Senna has been sitting on, but right now it has already been completed into the static shiv. Said, all right, well, you know what? We're actually not looking to fight that much early on, and we don't really have that much physical damage. Do you really need to finish the Black Cleaver as your first item? Evidently not. Instead, the ability to just continue clear out these waves with that static shiv on the Senna is the play of the game here. I like the little pivots in terms of the itemization, but in the end, you are going to be able to continue to clear out waves. You are going to be able to continue to farm up all the stacks. You're going to be able to continue to push down these towers. There's no one that's going to be able to stop these two. Bravo, try as he might, is not going to be able to get much more than a standing ovation from the rubble directly next to him. And as this dragon is slowly coming up, it is going to be GCS that pick up control of the river.
And right now, the position is going to be so important. Control over that banana bush is going to be so important. Going to get a little bit of engagement there in the mid as multiple ults get missed in the middle. Once again, Game Destroyer struggling to find their voice, but they aren't struggling to find the damage on Kog'Maw as they're already down to half HP. Things are not looking good for GCS having the Morgana down. However, she should have her full combo, and it doesn't look like SEF is going to contest this. I would definitely try. You've got the fighting power. You can't be cautious forever.
Yeah, you can't be cautious forever, but you can't really do nothing forever.
Taking multiple Qs, root after root after root, locking Rich down, but Rich doesn't care. He's got plenty of health regen, and it looks like we're getting a little bit of shifting here for the positioning. SEF has finally moved their way in their full 5-man stack. At this point, GCS can't fight just quite yet. This would be the best time for SEF to go in, but it looks like it's just not going to happen. Both sides are a little bit too cautious. Senna trying to boost the Yorick in there, trying to find a little bit of range in there. Sion able to get decent knockup, but Rich going to follow it up as the jungler and Sion are going to fight there in the top lane. We still got plenty of time here to do something, but no one's really wanting to choose the engagement just quite yet. It's a lot of back and forward, and once again, give us our entree. Going in, looking to deliver that entree, immediately gonna get a wrap down, trying to lock down the Mileo taking a good chunk of damage as Stratty Time is taking an absolute pounding from almost the entire team. Morgana had plenty of time to get her ultimate back, or that it was Sion on the other side, and SEF is turning this fight around. They've got a good amount of HP left. However, dead Sion gonna make their way in, gonna pick up a kill. They didn't get the Drake, but they might be able to turn this around. Unfortunately, they're just not going to follow it up. I would have dove into that for sure, especially with the dead Sion, but either way, that's going to tie up our dragons here, Anti, to 2-2.
Yeah, when you have two AD carries who are just free hitting the entire time, Kog'Maw is always gonna come out on top, despite it being two massive tanks on the side of GCS. How are you going to make use of your tanks when you've got a Void Puppy just eating straight through them at every single moment of outside of that? If you look at these items are designed for these long, extended fights. It's the Black Cleaver hadn't been finished yet from the side of GCS, so Fr3nzy wasn't going to be able to get any of that big meaningful poke. The Milio heals were more than enough to deal with the lack of interaction on the side of GCS. We don't quite yet have the range from Senna to go for those uncontested auto attacks, right? A lot of the time, the Hallowed Mist allows Senna to walk in, get an auto attack from outside your AD carry's range, and walk back out. Now, the big thing is when you have Kog'Maw with Milio, is that there's a very, very long time before Senna can outrange anything like that. In the meantime, this side lane just going to be stratty time on that Sylas, taking on Sen Papi Savvy on the Scion, and it's just so much interaction with very little substance.
Absolutely. Bubble's going to come in, and the Rap's going to do it as well. As Morgana pops her ultimate, trying to lock two of them down. Dark Fr3nzy taking a healthy amount of damage, getting so close to going down. Milio trying to keep them alive, but it's just not going to be enough. Morgana finally finding the damage there, and now they just need to take out the Zens and going to get a little bit of trade there with the help of Kog'Maw's bomb right there at the end. That's exactly what you want to see. And finally, we've got a little bit more gold here on Morgana. I was going to mention before how most of the gold in the game was on Scion, but finally, we get a little diversity here of the profile of that. Oberon, maybe, nope, not choosing to go in whatsoever. I don't blame him. I guess he doesn't know who's in that bush, so I'm not real surprised. But we do have Baron on the map now, so that is an objective we can start to contest.
Yeah, that's a big objective that is contestable. The big thing about it, though, is that with Kog'Maw off the table for the next second, there was very, very little actually done off of it, right? The mid lane was pushed in. There was a decent amount of damage on the tower, but it's just gold for the sake of gold, right? Now with Kog'Maw sitting at 2.5 items, we're just gonna count that feat as a decently sized item here. It's gonna be harder and harder as these games continue. You have to figure out a way how to get uncontested damage onto that Kog'Maw, and that's very, very difficult, barring some kind of flank like that. But you can't just rely on these miracle flanks each and every time unless you bring the entire kitchen sink to throw in towards that Void Puppy. But take a look at what the enemy team has. That's a Sylas. That's a Xin. Not the greatest champions when it comes to peeling, but enormous potential for actually going directly into that backline and trading backlines. And if you're trading backlines into a Senna, Senna's not healing up her team, right? It's not just trading backlines, it's making sure that the enemy front line is killable. So right now, as the Kog'Maw continues to farm up towards that Wit's End, I believe is going to be the next item. I'm honestly not sure. There's so many little things that you could build with the Cog. Oh, actually,
once again, Oberon looking for an angle. He does have another wrap, but it looks like Yorick's just going to be able to happily walk away as Scion continues to pick on his wave. There is an angle for them to grab, but they're going to have to worry about a good chunk of their team. Senna going to do a bit of rotating here. Morgana going to stay in the mid, but they've got to track down that Yorick. Yorick is going to be pretty slippery here, looking to back right there, but it looks like that's just not going to happen unless they just don't notice him. But it looks like the TP instead making their way, making a transition into Nashor. Nashor going down so fast, getting close to about half HP. Unfortunately, Bravo going to get caught exactly where they don't want to be. One shot left on them, and they do indeed go down. The number advantages on the other side, but it looks like we're lagging a little bit behind here on blue side. Nashor going to go down on that end. Multiple ultimates popping off left and right. Maiden dishing out a good chunk of damage. This can still go either way, but it looks like red side SEF is starting to fall apart. That Baron doesn't matter if you get taken out there at the end, and just about everybody from SEF is going to fall except for the Yorick.
Yeah, and Purple Worm for 4 going to end up disastrous for the side of SEF as Dark Fr3nzy ends up dying immediately after that Milio falls, right? Bravo, so important to making sure that this Kog'Maw can actually output damage. Says, all right, I'm just going to get some wards down. I'm going to get some vision down. I'm going to make sure that our team is fine. Gets tagged by the ultimate, gets tagged by the binding, and gets tagged by more than enough damage to take out that support, and all of a sudden, what are you going to do as Dark Frenzy? You're getting knocked up, you're getting stunned again, you're getting blown up right in the middle of the enemy team. And yes, you do have one member of your team, that Yorick, able to survive for just a little bit longer, but how much longer do you want this game to go? That is going to be even more people just committed towards that top side to try to take out Sen Papi Sabi. But even if the Scion does go down, this Kog'Maw needs that gold.
And Papi Sabi is indeed going to get focused here by 3. The shutdown finally comes out. Yorick getting a little bit of gold here in his pocket, as it looks like the rest of GCS makes their way down mid. And something I wanted to mention too is I think people forget that Baron is the original autocon, and I mean that in terms of like turning these fights around. In the past, Baron was the fight that was the objective that turned so many of these matches around. And I think you got to remember with Baron is like you need to not only take the objective, but you need to get out of it. And the stacking from GCF was just absolutely insane. Kog'Maw couldn't find targets. They couldn't find targets back and forward. Morgana got so low, got so close to getting taken out. But even if they had destroyed Morgana, there was still a Scion in their face non-stop. Just this absolute beefcake not giving up. And then Morgana, or sorry, not Morgana, Game Destroyer was able to get a 3-man ultimate there. I think just ending the fight for them at that point.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen a lot of ultimates leave a little bit to be desired on the side of Gamer Destroyer, but in the end, it works out very, very well for the team. Oh my god, that tower was gone immediately. Arena to come
down and absolutely take it out. However, here are the reinforcements here from GCF. They're going to go from Predator play rather quickly as Oberon goes in. Scion going to follow it up. This is exactly what I wanted to see. These two ultimates pair so well as Yorick fighting into Scion. There goes down the other side, and they get another kill, so it's a 1 for 2, but in the favor of GCS.
Yeah, GCS right now able to pick up a little bit more of that gold, a little bit more of those kills, but dropping 2 towers for it. Beautiful rotations from the side of Summit Esports. Fr3nzy here just going to make sure that Cream Corn is going bad as quickly as possible. Look at this Kog'Maw build. Look at how much damage this Kog'Maw is going to be able to put out. If this Kog'Maw knows what they're doing, I would love to see a Terminus. I would love to see a Jack Show just decide, hey, I don't need the Wit's End, just go straight Juggermaw. And it's just so unbelievably difficult for the Kog'Maw to be stopped at this point. I need a stat check on this Senna, because right now it's very, very difficult for the Kog'Maw to be dealt with by any champion, barring a Senna who has enough range to outrange those towers.
Absolutely, and as this game develops, I'm looking at the angle. I'm kind of analyzing the strategy here for SEF, and something I'm surprised they're not doing is they're not playing Rich and they're not playing Yorick forward as much. Like a lot of these fights, right? Like I know Rich wants to get in there, but at the very least, Yorick should be there, just kind of heading everyone off, buying time. Because even if Yorick dies and 4 of them escape with the Baron, that would have done so much. But they seem to have this hyper focus on these objectives, which can be good. But sometimes you have to use your players like pawns and do a little bit of sacrificing, and I think there's plenty of angles for them to do that. Yorick is so beefy. Rich has that such a powerful ultimate. Even Stratty time, Sylas is deceptively tanky. People forget how tanky and irritating Sylas can be to deal with unless you're actively playing against them. Then it's very hard to forget. But I'm surprised they're not using that to their advantage here, Auntie.
Yeah, I'm a little bit surprised they're not using it to their advantage, but one of the things I am most surprised with is that the fact that Stran has so few souls. We're sub 100 souls at 33 minutes in. So one of the things that Senna needs to do as a champion, as an AD carry, right, is after a certain point of the game, right, once you get out of laning phase, yes, you do need to farm. Yes, you do need your gold. But most importantly, you do need to follow your jungler around so that way you can get the guaranteed stacks off of these jungle camps, right? There's, you know, what, 6 stacks off of every single side. So that's 12 stacks off of every rotation. At the very least, you should be closer to, you know, 120 stacks at this stage of the game if you're playing a deathless Senna. Right? You want to make sure that you're around these things when they happen. You want to make sure that you're able to continually poke the enemy team down. But instead, we're playing a much more AD carry style standardized Senna, where it's just, hey, we pick up the waves. It doesn't really matter how many stacks we have, which I'd argue if you're choosing this as the counter into Kog'Maw, you do not have the luxury of doing.
Absolutely, and something I love that SEF is doing here is they're just going to keep Yorick in the top lane to continue hammering down that pressure, but giving up Soul is going to be so powerful to deal with. Bubbles is going to try to counter, but unfortunately going to run directly in the arena. There's the ultimate, and it's a good trade back and forth. However, I think this does favor Sion. He does still have Maiden there, but I think there's not really a lot of contestant. However, we do have Rich looking for an angle, looking for this smite, but unfortunately just not going to be able to get it. He's only going to fight death instead as Sion takes the top lane and Soul falls to Cream Corn.
Yeah, Soul might be belonging to Cream Corn, but so this inhibitor falls, as once again, as we said at the very beginning, Yorick is something you have to be worried about each and every time. Yorick steals your top inhib while his team takes the purple worm. That bottom tower is looking mighty juicy right now, and you're going to have to send 2, maybe even 3 to deal with that Yorick. That's a hull breaker Yorick. You cannot let him even look at your towers, or he will just take every single moment away from you here. But let's take a look at the items. Let's take a look at the game right now. So Fr3nzy slowly scaling up, building up to that Chempunk Chainsword. One of the only champions in the game that does buy Chempunk Chainsword. Actually, it's just largely because she's a champion that builds Black Cleaver early, but also is a very good applicator of that. Okay, Fr3nzy, be so for real with me right now. Why the Warden's Mail? Like, if you're okay. Anyway, Chempunk Chainsword is one of those items,
and it sounds like it's working.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that Chempunk Chainsword does is it's just okay. It's not nearly as good as Mortal Reminder, but if you have Black Cleaver, you can't build the Mortal Reminder, so Senna usually ends up picking it up because, yeah, who else on the team is going to end up getting it? Now, that Warden's Mail is almost certainly going to be for either a Frozen Heart or what is anticipated, a Randuin's Omen. Now, mind you, there is one champion on the enemy team that can crit, and nobody else on the enemy team can actually crit, so I don't really understand why the Randuin's Omen would be the choice here. I guess the Frozen Heart could be okay for reducing the auto attack speed from Kog'Maw, but that's not your job, right? As the AD carry, as the Senna, you need to be outranging that Kog'Maw. You need to be doing damage to that Kog'Maw. You can't just be sitting there being, oh, well, what if I build tankiness so that way I can trade autos with him 1-for-1? You're not going to be able to do that. Kog'Maw is never going to allow you to do that, and it is just going to be pain on pain on pain. In the meantime, Kog'Maw picking up that Terminus should be in a tough spot here.
The number advantage is not on the side of GCF. They thought it was. The flash comes out for Sinison, able to dodge a little bit. Strategy time closing the distance. Going to find it directly onto Morgana, but the ultimate comes down for a Mumu there in the background as Senna pops a shield, trying to keep people alive. Sion coming in, looking for the knockup, but the flash is good as strategy time gets isolated and destroyed by Sion, doing a massive amount of damage. Rich going back and forward, dealing a whole bunch to Morgana, but Morgana's going to be able to walk away as Game Destroyer locks down the Cogball. Dark Frenzy getting so close to going down, but now he's in bomb mode. He can find an angle there on Senna as Yorick is an absolute raid boss. It's turning into raid boss versus raid boss as Yorick takes on Sion, but Sion spends a little bit of moment to go for the Melio, and unfortunately, Morgana getting a little bit close, and that's a triple kill for the side of Yorick. Raid boss after raid boss not stopping as Sion finally getting taken out, but even if he gets destroyed, he's got to watch out for it. The arena coming down, and Yorick actually looks to be the victor as Maiden tries to dish out a little bit of damage, keeping the Yorick alive. Absolute insanity with only Yorick walking away from that wreckage, Auntie.
Yeah, and let's take a look at this fight one more time. Early flash away from Fr3nzy, wanting to make sure that strategy time doesn't get a hook onto him. Flash forward. The hijack is not on to anyone other than the Leona, but we're just getting a trade of ultimates in that backline. Once again, the backline trade will always favor the red side. 2 flashes burned on the side of the red team. Dark Fr3nzy just not getting a chance to play the game until someone walks into auto range. And surprise, surprise, when you've got Emilio, everyone's in auto range. Gamer Destroyer able to get that root in that backline. The stun onto the Kog'Maw, as once again, it's all about this Cog. It's all about the auto attacks just doing so much, and the passive comes on through. In the meantime, Senpai Savi gonna be able to put that Q down as mind control, make sure that Milio walks right on in. But when you've got Yorick versus the Scion, Fr3nzy, try as he might, is not going to be able to do anything against Baratel. This Yorick is once again looking straight at those towers and barreling straight down that lane.
Absolutely, and Baratel was ignored from most of that fight until right there at the end, and it really bit them in the butt. And I don't blame them. You get an opportunity to go for strategy time. You get an opportunity to go for Silas, and it's normally the objective you want to go for. But that TP coming in and just absolutely dominating the fight. He's got so much gold at this point, and the fact that he's able to trade into Scion at level 18 really shows how insane these two top laners are. But Senna's got to find a bit more peel. I feel like that was very disjointed. They did get strategy time, but maybe they should have spaced it out. It's really hard for me to tell exactly where everything fell apart, other than mentioning, Senna not being able to outrange and not being able to build those stacks. Well, you've got to favor the trade here by Kog'Maw. Kog'Maw just doing an insane amount of damage, but the same thing can be said with Yorick. Yorick's so scary. Rich over here for providing a little bit of support. Dark Fantasy going to do the same thing as Senpai Savvy, going to go in looking for an angle, going to find at least one knock up of that arena. I'm going to find him as well, as there he found out half HP. The ultimate coming out. Senna able to pop an ultimate there on their own. Plenty of back and forward, able to get decent amounts of knock up, but the arena is just absolutely devastating. The problem is Yorick is still ongoing. The trades are going back and forward. Dark Barrel is here to try to dish out some of the damage. Senna finally able to kite things out. Strategy time going to go in looking for the angle, but it's just not going to be enough as Game Destroyer buys in some time, and now it's going to turn into a 2v2, and I think Senna's just going to run away. I don't really blame her. That's a very scary Yorick.
Yeah, an extremely scary Yorick, and an even scarier Kog'Maw behind him, going to be able to heal up off of that wave.
Oh, no.
And we saw how much it was so terrifying for the side of GCS. I mean, Fr3nzy walked up. That's like an over 5k health Scion, and he immediately exploded. And that's one of the reasons why I hate this Frozen Heart on the Senna so much. Frozen Heart has a range. You're not going to be in range for that auto slowing aura, and it's just not going to be very useful here. In the meantime, the Elder Dragon going to be getting started up. Rich and Oberon off the table, going to be able to get back onto the field at around the same times. And oh boy, I don't know about this one.
Senpai Savvy going to go in, followed shortly behind by Game Destroyers. They absolutely isolate and destroy the Kog'Maw. Kog'Maw going to fall apart, and now they're going for their next problem, which of course is the Yorick. But look at all that health regen. Milio trying to keep them alive, trying so hard, but it's just not going to matter, as the Elder should fall to the other side. That's not what SEF wants. They won so many of these fights to make such a classic blunder to run directly into that. You saw the TP going. You should have just backed off and waited for a little bit of time to regroup and reset.
Yeah, I mean, that was one of those plays that you make when you know for a fact that there's no chance the enemy team can test you, because anyone walks in, you just immediately lose the game. We saw that right there. There's no flash on Dark Frenzy, no cleanse on that Kog'Maw, and they just didn't have a way how to keep the Cog alive, right? If Bravo's not there, you can't be expecting this Kog'Maw to output the same kinds of damage here, right? It's all about this Milio making sure that Kog'Maw is able to output game-ending amounts of damage here. But the Elder on the table, the Purple Worm almost certainly going to be going down here. I don't really like the look for the steal, but as you can see, into two massive objectives, it's going to be very difficult for the side of SEF to bring this one back if they don't just get a proper front-to-back 5v5. Now, I was saying earlier, right, I didn't like that Frozen Heart because Senna has a very massive auto range, and Frozen Heart attack speed aura also has a range. With that on Amumu and Scion, now you're certainly going to be getting into Kog'Maw range with that Frozen Heart. I will also say it doesn't stack So I'm not really sure if you need 3 people with Frozen Heart, but at the very least, you got it on some champions that can actually get close enough to make use of it. In the meantime, Fr3nzy going to be trying to help clear out these waves, but that's one of the big problems that this team composition does have. You lack that ranged, safe wave clear here, but oh, we're getting the ult trains to the back line.
Sion going in. He is indeed going to at least find a couple of people. No decent knockup, but the towers are just going to fall and absolutely melt as Oberon goes in. He just needs to buy time in order for the Nexus to go down, and they do have it. This is so close. All they need to do is just destroy the Nexus, and you win the game, and it looks like GCS is going to get it. They're going to say, we don't need to win the team fight. We just need to blow up the base, and that's going to be game number 1. Point number 1 going to GCS, Auntie.
And in the end, it all goes down to creamed corn. As remember, League of Legends is an objective-based game. They got that Dragon Soul, they got the Elder, they got the Baron, they got the base, they got everything it is that they needed. And GCS Cream Corn going to be able to take game number 1 in a slobber knocker of a game, is what I would say if we didn't have so much waiting, so much anticipation for those first kills, for the ball to start rolling. I mean, if you take a look at some of the media that was produced this week, just talking about the styles of these teams going into it, GCS Cream Corn was anticipated to be taking it in a 2-1 because this is a team that plays things very slowly. In the meantime, SCF, a team that plays so much more on momentum, was the team that was opting to go for the later game scaling team composition, something we really haven't seen from them. But in the end, it works out perfectly fine for the side of GCS, as you can see just how much damage these champions are doing to the turrets. Shout outs to top lane.
16K. Absolutely, just absolute monsters here, Auntie. And I think a lot of this boiled down to just purely they weren't playing for their strengths. Some at Esports Fr3nzy, they needed to be putting that Xin in the front line, or that Yorick in the front line, or in the back line, and providing the space that they needed for these fights. But a lot of that's easy to say in the moment. I really think the big catalyst that just kind of tipped things over was, of course, Yorick, and I forget who else it was that got caught right before the Elder Drake came out, because as soon as they had Elder Drake, there was no way to contest other than with a steal. There was no way to contest Baron whatsoever. And I think even losing Baron, it still would have been very, very hard to stem off the tide that was GCS. They had so much killing potential, and just even without the super minions, they were just going to be able to do so much. Either way, I think that's all we have for you for right now. We will have more. This is a best of 3 series, but we're going to go into a tiny break. Make sure to grab yourself some refreshments and some drinks, and we're going to go into, I believe, a tiny ad break so we don't get ads during this. So we'll see you in about 2 to 3 minutes.
Like, ride with me if you ride with me, you can slide with me if you feel like 550 on the 5 sticky, come get high with me, that's a deal, right? Ride with me if you ride with me, you can slide with me if you feel like 550 on the 5 sticky, come get high with me, that's a deal, right? That's a deal, right? That's a bet, right? That's a bet, right? That's a deal, right? That's a deal, right? That's a bet, right? That's a deal, right? That's a deal, right? That's a bet, right? That's a deal, right? That's a deal, right? Ayy, coming down like precipitation. I ain't never met a limitation. Hater plotting my elimination. Gotta go to Google for the information. I'm a superstar, so I gotta shine. Top dollar be the bottom line. Bottom feeding niggas out of line. Turn your heart rate to a dotted line. Yeah, my zodiac probably dollar sign. Got the energy to win it, my nigga, I'm feeling great. Got a date with destiny, focusing on my fate. I don't give a fuck what you rapping, you been a fake. I'm everything that they ain't, it can't be, it won't be. Wanna see me fall, I can't go, I won't leave. Coming from the block with plain clothes and police. Straight up to the top with bankrolls and rollies. Ride with me if you ride with me, you can slide with me if you feel like 550 on the 5 sticky, come get high with me, that's a deal, right? Ride with me if you ride with me, you can slide with me if you feel like 550 on the 5 sticky, come get high with me, that's a deal, right? That's a deal, right? That's a bet, right? That's a bet, right? That's a deal, right? That's a deal, right? That's a bet, right? That's a deal, right? That's a deal, right? That's a bet, right? That's a deal, right? That's a deal, right? Ayy, 12 can't really stop shit, so I'm still pushing like a mosh pit. Ice dripping, think I'm hot shit. In the yellow bucket with the mop stick. I've been jugging jams like wholesale. Everything must go sell. Hitting bitches with the old well. Need 100 million on the low scale. On my worst night, I'm the best nigga. Wouldn't mess with you, couldn't cap to him. Homie spotted me like 700, brought 1100 right back to him. If I can't do it, then it ain't real. I just make dollars, I don't make deals. I've been going hard in the paint, still blowing kush clouds till I can't feel like. Ride with me if you ride with me, you can slide with me if you feel like 550 on the 5 sticky, come get high with me, that's a deal, right? Ride with me if you ride with me, you can slide with me if you feel like 550 on the 5 sticky, come get high with me, that's a deal, right? That's a deal, right? That's a bet, right? That's a bet, right? That's a deal, right? That's a deal, right? That's a bet, right? That's a deal, right? That's a deal, right? That's a bet, right? That's a deal, right? That's a deal, right?
Alrighty, Auntie, and we are back going into game number 2, Draft 2. Do you have any predictions? Do you think that both sides are going to be able to get their stuff together for this upcoming game?
Yeah, I mean, it should be interesting to see how things do go into game number 2. And we were talking extensively about this, off broadcast, while we were just waiting for game number 2 to swing around. But I would love to see these teams build a team composition that does one thing, right? So a lot of the times we were thinking, oh, well, was it this part? Was it that part? Was it this play? Was it that play? And while certain things are from, oh, well, they could have made this decision a little bit better. They could have made that decision a little bit better. If you have a team composition where all 5 members are planning on doing one thing in particular, it becomes much easier to choose one thing to do. Right. So if you're going to build a Kog'Maw composition, I want to see everyone built to keep that Kog'Maw alive. If you're going to be building a split push composition, I want everyone built to make sure that that split push succeeds. If you're building a Senna composition, right, I want to make sure that Senna is going to be able to get in with as much range as possible for those autos and walk out for free. Right? There's just so much of it that's a matter of figuring out whether or not these teams can actually output exactly what it is they want at exactly the right time. But we're going to have to see what kind of draft they do have cooking up for us and see if it has a little bit more of that focused quality, I guess would be the way to put it.
That synergy is going to be so important, and I don't think it was entirely just on Fr3nzy. What I think was a little frustrating for me to see is you've got a Mumu, you've got Leona, right? You've got so much on the other side of Cream Corn to where they can just sort of mash all their buttons, and they just need that execution. I really want to hear what their comms was going on, because if I was their shot caller, as soon as one ultimate lands, I would be telling everybody to mash all of their buttons and go in and just spend everything. And it sounds a little bit reckless, but with the team comp you've got a lot of spots to start layering ultimates, and Sion has so much movement with his ultimate, with his TP, and I was just kind of upset that Cream Corn didn't use that to their advantage. I don't blame them for being cautious. However, that one's in the past. That game's over. It's now 1-0. It looks like GCS is sticking blue side, if this is correctly. If this is correct, words are hard, and then SEF is going red, so the counter picks here for SEF are going to be very powerful. First ban out, Ornn, Jinx. I think we were talking about this in the background here, Auntie, how Jinx has gotten a bit of buff, and I'm excited for it. I love to see Jinx in play, and I think SEF is going to try to save that for if they get their hands back on blue side, but they did pick red side, so we'll see.
Yeah, I mean, you're going to take away those long-range AD carries, get rid of that Jinx, get rid of that Caitlyn. I mean, at this point, you're going to be looking at, oh my goodness, I was literally about to say Ashe, the next long-range AD carry that you can pick up, right? There's not really so much in terms of super long-range AD carries anymore. Senna's off the table, Kog'Maw's off the table, Ashe is off the table. We were talking about Jarvan earlier, right? One of those champions that against immobile AD carries does very well at locking them down, but more importantly, if you are picking an immobile AD carry yourself, does a phenomenal job at making sure you have the ability to buy space for them. Aurora going to be picked up here, another champion that will make Ashe's life a living hell. You got the Cataclysm, you've got the Weirding, you got so many things that will make Ashe's life very difficult. Now, we've got a Mundo pick early on. Now, I know all of you in chat have probably seen Aloise on that Mundo. I will say, this is a champion that when it comes to competitive, gets very heavily overrated. Right? This is a champion that can get shut down by team play, can get shut down by people who understand champions that you can pick to counter it, like the Fiora. But instead, we're going to be taking up the Sivir here, trying to make sure that we always have a way how to deal with these beefy frontliners, being that Pantheon and that Mundo. Now, as the Sivir, as long as you can auto attack them, you're also hitting that backline.
Absolutely, and I want to double back here to not necessarily Oberon here on Dr. Mundo, but the Dr. Mundo pick in general. I do not like Dr. Mundo first pick unless you already know who the other side is. I do not like him because Mundo wants to do two things. He wants to get a whole bunch of gold, and he wants to beat you to death with his own health bar. He wants to rip it off from above his head and beat you to death with it. If he's not able to leverage gold and his health bar, he will get shut down over over and over and over. And there are so many champions on the board that are great at fighting into Dr. Mundo. You know, you've got Mbessa, who's a very big meta pick. There's just so many other options to even Volibear. Like, Volibear isn't typically a crazy meta top laner. He's still decently strong, but Volibear's decent into Dr. Mundo. He fares very, very well, and he's not exactly a difficult champion to play. I do like the pick here for Pantheon. We've got Pantheon, we've got Seraphine, so we've got a lot of lockdown engage. Pantheon is one of my favorite junglers in general because he's just this surgical knife, followed into Ryze, who I've seen a lot more and more, and I've been excited to. I even got to see Ryze live at LTA Grand Finals, which is absolutely fantastic to see. This is one of those champions that has either been super great or terrible, and I think this is the first time he's kind of like in the middle from what I've seen.
Yeah, and right now we are seeing that Mel come out, another one of those champions that is just going to be doing raw DPS on DPS. Now, one of the things that we had said earlier, right? Mundo, one of those champions that we really... I'm so glad I found another Mundo hater. It's hard to find them nowadays. But it's one of those champions that you can't really pick unless you know who the enemy top laner is. Now, if that was a hard call out for the Aurora, I actually do like this Mundo pick, right? You know, now that you know, hey, it is going to be Aurora, I am going to be able to just build an early Spirit Visage. I'm going to be able to survive as long as I want. You know, it should be fine. And in the meantime, Seraphine Ashe, a very underrated bot lane combo, but I love it so much. I think Seraphine is one of those champions that's genuinely a lot stronger than people give her credit for right now, especially with Dawn Core as a ridiculous item. I think that Moon Core, like Moonstone into Dawn Core, is a combo that people just aren't going nearly enough. But if you do have a Mundo with a Spirit Visage, you're getting like 900 something health off of every double W. It's actually unbelievable. So I'm really excited to see how this works out.
Absolutely, Auntie. And she did get a little bit of buff. I don't know if that's what you were mentioning before. I don't remember all of the specifics, but I remember Cubby going into a little bit of detail over the patch notes of how she was getting maybe not a buff, but maybe just a little bit of a change and how it can compound off of items pretty well, how it can compound off of Dr. Mundo, like you pointed out there. I really enjoy that, especially into stuff like Ryze, because the other thing that Game Destroyer can do here is they can pop down the Encore and give time for Ryze to ultimate and just absolutely cut the entire team off. So that's going to be so hard to deal with. And the thing I'm worried about too is we've got Sivir in the bottom lane. Sivir is a very powerful champion, but she needs those 4 items. If she's able to get those 4 items out and going, she's almost unstoppable. There are angles to go for her, and I do see that, but I am worried about the early game here for Sivir. So they're really going to have to play back and lean heavily into that wave clear.
Yeah, honestly, I'm really excited to see what exactly the plan is, especially because Sivir, one of those champions that we've seen time and time again over the years, being said to have a 6-item power spike. The entirety of Fr3nzy is going to be getting spotted out here. Oberon
don't stay.
None the wiser, though.
Oh, no. Having to blow a flash early on as Braum goes forward, and the passive is good. The stun comes down, and Oberon goes down to the worst possible person who could get it, which is going to be the Sivir. That is now an accelerated Dark Fr3nzy. That is now an accelerated Sivir.
That is not only an accelerated Dark Fr3nzy and an accelerated Sivir, that is a Pantheon with E-start. This is disastrous for the side of GCS. Pantheon now forced to start the Raptors, going to be in a very tough position here. I'm sure that Strategy Time understands what's going on, and perfectly placed from Bubbles to just make sure that the Mel can't go over to those Raptors. But like, it's literally, what else can you start? I mean, you could start the Wolves. Your clear itself is going to be very delayed at this point. In the meantime, Bravo and Dark Fr3nzy going to be very happy in that bot lane, taking a decent trade there. Actually, the Braum is relatively low in health. Are we getting a big fight in the bot lane?
It looks to be. Sivir's pretty far forward, and there's a lot of damage back and forward. Dark Fr3nzy seems to be trading, and it looks like GCS is the better for it. This is kind of what I was talking about. Even with Sivir having that early gold, she's still going to struggle in this early game. Granted, like I said, that gold's going to help a lot, but it won't do absolutely everything. Ashe is really, really oppressive. Ashe and Seraphine running directly into those massive slows back and forward. And Braum's not necessarily at a disadvantage, but what Braum really wants to do is Braum wants to play into other melee supports. And when he doesn't, he's got to land these Qs constantly to sort of make up for the lack of that. And that's going to be really hard because Seraphine can trade into him all day.
Yeah, I mean, it's so difficult to see what it is that these two champions can do if you're not able to actually hit the wave. That is 3 CS on Dark Frenzy. It might have been a very good start with that first blood, but look at this. Look at that combo, right? Seraphine Ashe, a combo that's so unbelievably oppressive in the right hands. One slow from the Ashe, all of a sudden Seraphine has access to the root or access to the stun if she so desires. It's just so difficult to actually play into this, to actually exist, especially when your support is not just the Braum, but most importantly, a champion that does so much in ways outside of engaging, right? So much of Braum is denying engage. So much of Braum is 2v2ing. So much of Braum is not going all in like a Leona, is not being able to actually punish the Seraphine Ashe. But in the end, we are seeing a big fight in the top lane.
Dr. Mundo taking a healthy amount of damage. I was talking about this before. Dr. Mundo wants to leverage his health bar, and he's going to have a hard time doing that into Aurora. However, Oberon going around as the trade is still very powerful. Oberon looking for it. You've got to watch out for this. I believe we do not have an ultimate whatsoever as the stun comes in, and Dr. Mundo going to try to pick up a kill. If he can get this will give him the advantage he needs, but he's not going to take it, and unfortunately, Oberon's going to pick it up. He can use that in other places, but that's really going to hurt Dr. Mundo. He needs that gold advantage.
Yes, Sen Papi Savi not going to reactivate the W in time, and that electrocute does so much work for Baratel. In the meantime, bot lanes are getting aggressive here.
Rich coming in from the background. Unfortunately, Dark Fr3nzy going to get taken down there by Ashe, and it looks like so might Bravo on the other side. Rich looking for an angle to go over the wall. The flag and drag does happen, followed into a stun there on this other side, but the passive there for the other side is also going to be just as powerful as Strand goes down, and the feats of warfare actually go to SEF. Now Game Destroyer is left here for Jarvan to pick up a double kill in the bot lane. I think that was the best of a worse situation. They're able to take out Fr3nzy, so at least some of the gold went to Ashe, but that's got to be devastating, losing the feats of warfare with not even 5 minutes on the clock yet here, Auntie.
Yeah, I mean, we are absolutely kicking it into full gear. Last time we had an over-under 15 minutes for first blood. This time we haven't even gone to 5 and we got 6 kills. In the meantime, the Cole gonna be getting picked up for Dark Fr3nzy here. I will say it's gonna be a little bit difficult to actually find a way to farm up there, but in the meantime, top lane is suffering for Sen Papi Savi. This is why we hate the Mundo early, but don't forget, right? This is one of those lanes that Mundo should be able to survive a little. Well, there's a lot less surviving going on. Never mind.
Sitting at 0 and 2, and Dr. Mundo, we both talked about how sketchy it's going to be. The Ruddle coming down there, but Bubble able to measure it out and just kind of wait, having a lot of patience as Rise trades back and forward. Aurora grabbing that kill once again, and I think a lot of that stems from Dr. Mundo not able to pick up the kill there right there on Aurora when Pantheon either took it or Dr. Mundo died beforehand. It really just plays into it, and Aurora just, she's just got to be loving this match, right? Because Dr. Mundo cannot get close, and Aurora wants you to walk into her so she could just absolutely nuke you, like we're gonna see right there. Yep, one tap, dead and gone.
Yeah, I mean, one way to say that is one tap, but if we take a look at live here, another tap going to be taking out Strand. The Ashe dead once again. It's looking so good for the side of SEF, but I mean, a lot of that is just this disrespect from the side of Sen Papi Savi. You know, the Mundo just continually taking much more damage than he wants, and I don't care how many Alois videos you watch. I don't care how many games of Mundo you play. If you are already dying twice against your lane opponent, please just pick up the Spirit Visage. She's a magic damage champion. Spirit Visage is a good item on you. You do not need the Heartsteel.
but he wants it, and Mundo is going to go for it. He does his ultimate going up and ready to pop. But I think the thing with Dr. Mundo is I think people kind of misunderstand him. They just think, oh, Dr. Mundo, crazy tanky champion. And while that's true, he's very situational. He's a lot like Poppy, and he's a lot like Cho'Gath. I don't like Cho'Gath first pick unless you already know who you're up against. Cho'Gath can be powerful. Poppy can be powerful. Dr. Mundo can be powerful, but it all just depends on the situation. You got to have the team comp for it. You got to have the opponent for it. It's just that's not the case here. This could have been an Ornn game. However, Oberon going to find an angle there on Aurora, going to go in, taking a good chunk of damage, but it looks like Bravo's going to do a bit of rotation here. We are ready here for the Void Grubs a little bit earlier than I expected, about 7:40 on the clock, so 20 seconds on those Grubs as we get a full rotation. I do like this. We were talking about how we didn't see enough rotations as Dark Frenzies makes their way to the top, but it looks like they're just going to ultimately back off. Not sure what the plan is here, Antti.
Yeah, I mean, right now we are seeing that rotation. I don't know. There's so much of the time where these teams really do need to be rotating their bot lane to other lanes. They need to be rotating their top lane to other lanes. And at the risk of being a little bit too dismissive, right? It's one of those things that you really have to learn about competitive in comparison to your solo queue games, right? These are strats that not only you can do, but strats that you really should be doing. These rotations for these early objectives is how you manage to have the very consistent play overall. In the end, they are going to be sticking Dark Frenzy in this bot lane, and they're throwing the kitchen sink here.
Absolutely knocking Dark Frenzy there, Antti. Absolute shenanigans, and this is exactly what I was talking about. Pantheon is the scalpel for his team. That ultimate does so much work, especially when you have the damage to follow it up. And finally, we get at least a little bit of lifeblood here in the side of bot lane. And I think favoring the Ashe isn't the worst thing. I think at this point, Dr. Mundo is just going to lose lane, and maybe you should just happen. So play off of the Ashe, play off the Seraphine, or maybe even play off of the Rise.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, at this point, it's actually what I would consider the point of no return for Mundo, but the point of it doesn't really matter, right? Mundo doesn't really care if he gets any more behind because he will get to a point of relevancy. That's the beauty of this champion. You always hit that late game power fantasy as long as the game doesn't end before that point. And when you are playing in a competitive match, you don't have to deal with your teammates running out.
Oh, Savvy Senpai going to take a good chunk of damage. However, he did blow the Cataclysm there by Rich. Rich going to go a little bit in too deep, but he does have Braum here for a little bit of shield. And once again, Dr. Mundo going down there in the bot lane as Rise is struggling to trade here into Stratty time.
Yeah, and once again, I mean, it's just the constant trades coming in from Baratel, but the Aurora will eventually get to a point where she's not really going to be able to kill that Mundo straight up, right? So Mundo is going to be able to side lane. Mundo is going to be a pain in the butt as this game continues to run late. That being said, it's very, very difficult for Dark Frenzy in this bot lane. We got the weak side top lane, and we've got the weak side bot lane. At the very least, Sivir, one of those champions that does very good in those weak side positions, but you do need this Sivir to be online, right? I mean, especially into a Seraphine that is building up into that Moon Core combo, you have to be very, very careful that you're not just leaving your AD carry out to dry, especially when she's the one who's going to be building the Mortal Reminder. She's the one who might be building up that Serpent's Fang, right? The AD carry that is going to be not only doing all this damage, but also reducing all of the utility from the enemy team. But you can't just leave behind the Sivir just because she has those 2 kills. You need to find a way how to continue to keep her accelerated, but she's already started to fall behind 20 CS.
Absolutely. She does have a little bit of kills, at least up on, so it's, I think the goal is probably about even here, since about 30 CS is about 300 gold, which is the equivalence of 1 kill, so they're pretty close. And I think Sivir tying isn't the worst thing. Robo coming down, Bubble's got to worry about the flag and drag. Flag and drag does happen, and the armor shred comes in just in time. However, Oberon gonna find an angle here on Rich. Rich taking a whole bunch of damage. The trade back and forward, the crystalline arrow coming in from downtown, but unfortunately so are the stuns. Shutdown coming down on the Pantheon. Pantheon trying to turn things around, picking up a double kill in the mid lane, and now our score is 5-7 as Ashe starts to hammer Dark Frenzy.
Yeah, and Bravo gonna be putting up that shield, but you're not shielding anything. Let's take a look at this replay. Once again, Strattytime and Bubbles just going toe-to-toe with the Rise. Not nearly enough of the stacks from this Mel to make worth on that ultimate, and the enchanted crystal arrow comes straight in from downtown. Rich gets stunned up, doesn't have a chance to play the game before that Q comes through. Another Q coming on in, and Bravo caught on that ward, not going to be able to do anything but watch as his teammates fall. The dragon gonna be taken up by Oberon, but in the end, there's a huge momentum swing for the side of GCS.
Absolutely, and the scalpel strikes again with a lot of help there from that crystalline arrow, just doing so much work, buying Pantheon time to get more of their kit online. Senpai taking a healthy amount of damage, and it's just not stopping. He's 0-3, getting dangerously close to 0-5. He does have his ultimate, but the thing with Aurora is she's got that burst damage, so you don't always have the same window you would if you were fighting a melee top in the top lane.
QE ult? I'm thinking it's auto QE ult here, but okay, Pantheon, there we go. We have the Pantheon. I don't think this is actually gonna
down.
Yeah, this isn't going to actually turn into any actual kills of any kind. I mean, at the very least, was able to burn Baratel's flash, so not the worst thing on the planet. Does mean that Senpapi Savi has the ability to survive a little bit longer. The ultimate being down is fairly difficult for the Mundo if Baratel does decide to stay, but instead, it's actually Braum gonna get taken up here.
Rob getting so close to going down, but they've got to worry about going directly into that tower, and Fr3nzy there for the save that did stop his reset, which means the pressure is going to be on here in the bot lane. We don't have an objective for another 3 minutes at least here, so I'm guessing the next one coming up here is Shelly here any minutes, I believe. I don't remember exactly when the time frame for that one is, but we should get that ongoing. And the thing that's so important is, honestly, if you're Pantheon and you can buy a little breathing room with that ultimate for Dr. Mundo, I think that's going to be so helpful, because he just needs time to come online. He really needs to get gold. He really needs to get going. He needs to get some MR for sure, because this is a lot of magic damage to deal with.
Yeah, but this is a lot of damage here.
Followed in a crystalline arrow as Rich gets absolutely destroyed and taken down. No objective to follow it up, but still, once again, the tempo continues to shift as Rise walks directly into a stun, and the rebuttal comes out, dealing damage to himself. Mel into Rise is a bit more frustrating than I expected it to be for the Rise.
Yeah, but I mean, at this point, the question is how much of this is momentum being moved around, right? The momentum is firmly in GCS's pocket if you're not looking at that top lane, right? Stride Time might be able to make sure that Bubbles is struggling in that mid lane, but look at this bot lane. They might have decided to weak side the Sivir, but you cannot just leave the Sivir alone forever. In the meantime, top lane's just all about this Aurora. You just walk up, auto QE, and then you just get a bit of damage. Even if you miss it all, first turret is first turret. And that, I believe, is feats for the side of SEF. Gamer Destroy in trouble.
Gamer Destroyer picking up a lot of damage. Braum gonna pop his ultimate, trying to get this kill here for Sivir. This would be great here for Fr3nzy. Redemption coming down. Rise coming in there in the background. They do indeed get the kill. There's gonna be on the hunt there for Sivir, as Rise is actually doing a good chunk of damage. Pantheon gonna get isolated in his jungle. The Rumble is going to be in his jungle, but unfortunately, he is gonna be the victim up there, and a shutdown comes down on Pantheon as Fr3nzy picks up another kill in bot lane. Now sitting at 3-2, accelerating the hyper carry even more, Anti.
Yeah, Fr3nzy able to survive through that one. Bravo and Fr3nzy both getting out is enormous for the side of GCS. That redemption pop was extremely high value, and now with this Herald going down, they're going to be able to go even faster. Now remember, Ashe Seraphine is a combo that requires both of those champions to be together. You cannot separate these pieces, right? It's not like a spoon and fork where either one of them is useful. These two champions are a pair of chopsticks. You need them together if you want to be able to get much of any use out of them. But right now, it's just separated pieces out. You need all 5 pieces of your Exodia composition. You need that enchanted crystal arrow to land, but instead you're getting none of this whatsoever. Dragon is up in 50 seconds as Senpapi Savi is going to continue to run down that top lane. That is the fully completed Warmogs, and we are getting into that position where, you know, Mundo is going to be a problem. But you know, with this Herald pop, we are going to get a very good rotation onto that mid lane. How much damage can you do to this tower? It's not... Oh, wow. It's actually going to take the entire thing. But is Rich going down?
Rich suffering a good chunk of damage. There's the TP there for Dr. Mundo as Brav goes over the other side. Redemption coming down, trying to buy themselves time with some Bobby Sabi. Puts himself directly in the thick of it. Rich got a Cataclysm, trying to buy himself time and flag and drag over the wall. And somehow SEF able to escape that relatively unscathed. Pantheon ulting somewhere. Looks like for the Drake. I don't blame him trying to go for it. That ultimate doesn't take too long. Crystalline Arrow less than halfway done. So that's the nice thing about both Ashe and Pantheon is those ultimates are up relatively quickly. Strand gonna get caught and run directly into Dark Frenzy. However, Dark Frenzy is gonna take a good amount of damage there on their side as stun after stun happens on the Aurora. Rich now looking for a kill. Gonna flag and drag, gonna flash forward, gonna look for an angle here on Bubbles. Bubbles gonna go immediately into a Rune Prison, trading back and forward. Dr. Mundo now here to delay some damage down, but he's gonna go for Predator play rather quickly. He does buy time for Oberon to pick up the objective and for all of GCS to walk away. That was very, very smooth, and I think a lot of it aided Pantheon grabbing that Drake, grabbing that objective.
Yeah, very, very smooth escape there. And we are continuing this escape as Oberon in a lot of trouble here. The tower is so tempting to dive right now. And Rich coming around, making sure that nobody is in the deep end as they completely take that tower off the table.
Tower going down, Sivir going mid, Pantheon going in, looking for an angle, followed into a Crystalline Arrow there on that side. Rich gonna take a good chunk of damage. Redemption coming down, being so powerful. Look at all that HP coming back, but it may not be enough as Rich gets isolated and destroyed. Sivir so hard to get away from that slow is absolutely insane. Oberon still looking for more kills. Oberon waiting for the Rise to come in, but they do at least get one kill, but Sivir is knocking at the door. Sivir is in mid lane, pushing things down.
Yeah, and we're split pushing on the Sivir right now, not going to be with the team, not going to be in a position to help everything out. But at the very least, we have the Cole Pop. We have even more gold being inserted onto the Sivir. We've talked time and time again about accelerating this Sivir. We talked time and time again about this Ashe being a problem, and Bravo is just so far gone.
Why are you there? I don't normally like to call it out, but why are you there? There's no reason. The objective's not up. Your ward doesn't matter. I'm not sure what the plan was. Either way, Bravo unfortunately going down inside the jungle. I guess that is his first death, so I can't complain at him too much, but that did seem a little silly on my end, Auntie.
Yeah, I don't know. There's definitely a thought to be had of confident warding, I guess would be one way to put it, where I say, yeah, I am going to walk into the enemy jungle and I'm going to get some wards down. And if they see me, they will have the understanding and the respect that I am a good enough player to not just do this without any backup. And a lot of the times teams will see it and they will give you that respect. They will say, all right, well, you know, certainly they have backup going into this, right? And they leave you alone. This time, Bravo's bluff getting immediately called, especially as he walks further into the jungle. But speaking of which, Bravo walking further towards Strand.
Missing the Q. Taking a good chunk of damage. Redemption coming down. That ability is so powerful, but it may not be enough. The ultimate coming down, but it looks like we're going to get it. Flag and drag. Cataclysm there on the other side as we try to target down Dark Frenzy, but it's just not going to be a Rich coming in. Bubbles doing the exact same thing. Stratty time. Now, really a lot of back and forward. The stun coming in. Flag and drag looking for an angle there on Bubbles. Oberon here for the save. And we do get a rebuttal right there into the stun for Sivir and a lot of back and forward. I do like the plan. I do like the strategy, but the problem is now Sivir is 4-2 and getting closer and closer. Bubbles trading directly in to the Aurora. Aurora taking a healthy amount of damage, popping their ultimate, going back and forward, doing Aurora things, able to get out, but that means that ultimate is no longer going to be up. And what is up right now that's important is we have Autocon.
Yeah, and Autocon being up right now is a big commitment. But you have to remember, Oberon not visible on the map. We do see Oberon in top lane, but, you know, Armchair Quarterback knows all, but right now we are seeing the teleport come on in. Are they going to know? Are they going to contest? Are they going to do anything about it? No, it's just the continued take on the blue buff. This is a free Autocon.
That's absolutely devastating. No wards, no blue trinkets, no Pantheon ult going to intercept it. I don't really blame them for being apprehensive, but they should at least try to scare them off, even if they don't want a full fight. Because the thing I always mention is when you have a Jarvan on the enemy side, you going for Baron is very, very frightening. Speaking of frightening, Dark Fantasy going to take a good chunk of damage, having to blow their cleanse when the crystalline arrow comes out and Ashe takes a lion's share of damage. But something I wanted to note is that Autocon doesn't necessarily scale or stack with the armor shred of Flag and Drab, but they do interact with each other and they do compound to the best of my ability. So when you've got Jarvan, you've always got to worry about that, where you have to worry about extra armor shred and then just people falling apart. And when you have someone like Dark Fantasy, when you have Sivir to follow it up, it's really, really scary. But for GCS to not even contest it, not even throw down wards, I'm not sure what the thinking was.
Honestly, I mean, it's very easy to say, like, okay, what was the idea here? What was the thought? I think GCS very clearly did not know, right? They did not have the idea that it was happening. They did not have the idea that they should check it. Because if you manage to sneak an objective against an Ashe, you deserve that objective, 100%. In the meantime, Bubbles deserved to die for that teleport, but does not do so. Instead, able to walk on out, phase rush, a phenomenal rune for the Rise, and going to be able to get so much out of that. And now with the Cataclysm, this could be big.
In, locking down, Encore going to come down. Bravo trying to provide a little bit of breathing room here. Somehow Ashe able to get out. However, it looks like Aurora's going to go for it as Stratty Time coming in the background, dealing a good chunk of damage, able to isolate. That's 2 down on that side as Dark Fantasy has to back off. Story Time going to run, popping his rebuttal once again. Aurora able to do a good chunk of damage. Dr. Mundo finally online, picking up kill after kill as Rise has to worry about Dark Frenzy, and Sivir and Aurora are such a scary combo to run into with the power of On the Hunt. Exactly what you want to see here for Sivir. Sivir's got to be feeling pretty, and now they might just solo a Drake.
Yeah, and just like that, Dark Frenzy going to be able to start taking out this dragon. Redemption coming down, making sure that he stays as healthy as possible. Jarvan also making his way over. Almost certainly will not be here in time, but at the very least, there's no one else in the area. This dragon is going to go down for them. It's not like the Elder Dragon that we saw in that last game, where it was just going to be a trade of the mid laners or the top laner coming on in to try to mess up everything for them. Instead, it is Dark Frenzy being able to pick up even more gold on this Sivir. I mean, the biggest problem that Sivir has at this awkward stage of the game is just lacking attack speed. Right now, with the boots able to be completed into the fully upgraded version, you should be fine. Bravo shouldn't be in that much trouble. Enchanted Crystal are coming through, though.
Arrow gonna lock down the Rich. Rich has got to worry about that. He does have Flag and Drag, but look at all that damage and all of those hurts. Cataclysm coming in, but ultimately it is useless. This is showing why Ashe is still a very solid, still a very powerful ADC, and you cannot underestimate her. That Cataclysm did come down. Jarvan thought he was locking Ashe in there with him, but it was the other way around.
Yeah, in the meantime, we're seeing Oberon
coming in. Oberon trading back and forward, going to get a decent stun. However, you got to worry about Sivir. Dark Fantasy able to do a good chunk on the hunt, getting popped, at least pushing some of those minions. A lot of trading back and forward. Baron is up on the map, so there is an objective for them to try and fight for, but the number advantage is definitely in the side of GCS. But I think at this point, GCS needs to back and reset. Dr. Mundo is going to be pushing that side lane, finally able to find his rhythm, sitting at 3 and 4, backing off right there at the end. But that T2 at the very least is going to be pressured.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that I was going to say here, right? Dark Frenzy was sitting on a decent amount of gold. We're seeing right there. That's what, 1,700 gold, 1,775 actually being spent there in that one recall. Just sitting on a little bit too much gold, not going to be able to do quite enough in those fights. In the meantime, Bubbles has very slowly been very quietly been building up to a very solid game on the Rise. Has not died a single time, 212 CS, keeping very, very even with the Mel. There we go, completely even with the Mel. But right now, it's just a matter of seeing how much value can you get out of this Rise. How much of this split pushing are you going to be seeing from the Rise? How much of the team fighting damage are you going to be able to put out? Are you going to be able to match that Sivir damage as you do continue? Now, one of the things I would like to see from Dark Frenzy is a Navori flicker blades in order to make use of the double down on that ultimate, so that way you always have the blades just bouncing across the entirety of the enemy team. But more importantly, I would love to see some utility coming in this Sivir build, right? An Executioner's Calling, a Moral Reminder, a Serpent's Fang. You know, these things that make it so that way Seraphine doesn't get a chance to just do every single thing that she wants here, especially with that Echoes of Helia already picked up. In the meantime, Rich going
coming
on
in,
some
flag and drag on Dr. Mundo. They don't find the knockup, but at the very least they do blow the passive stun coming in and is going to miss. And once again, more reinforcements as Brav goes to go in and once again trying to find a stun. The ultimate does get popped for Senpapi, but Senpapi just doesn't have what it takes to continue duking this out. Redemption coming down, showing still over and over how powerful that item is. Stratty is able to pick up another kill in top lane, and that means Baron is potentially on the menu.
Yeah, Baron's potentially on the table here, but you have to remember, this is an Ashe.
Flag and drag coming over the wall, gonna try to lock him down. Cataclysm, but unfortunately the plant's right there. Just one more shot. Yes, indeed, he does find the passive for Braum. So powerful, and it looks like SCF able to turn this around again. They now have 2 kills, and this Baron should be a foregone conclusion.
Yeah, but that ward isn't getting picked up by that control ward, so at the very least they do have the vision. They do have the Grand Starfall available. Are you going to go for one of those crazy steals? We see Oberon in position here. Are they going to go for it? I'm expecting to see it around here if it comes through. No, it is just going to be that Baron completely and totally secured by the side of SEF. Summon Esports Fr3nzy in a very happy spot here, especially with 3 items on that Sivir, getting ever so closer to that 6-item power spike. We might as well call this the 4 items that we were waiting for, but if we can get to 1 more big item, that is huge for the Sivir, where she starts to become extremely relevant, and if we get 1 or 2 more on top of that, then she becomes unhinged in how much damage she can output.
Well, and something I've got to point out here is the feats of warfare going to the side of SCF means Sivir has even more scaling. They have those upgraded boots, which may not sound like a lot, but on Sivir, that helps so much. Every little bonus she gets adds to her multiplicative, which is exactly what Sivir wants to do. So she just gets scarier and scarier and scarier. We are starting for the 3rd Drake. This Drake is going to be so important, but I don't think GCS has the confidence to contest this. However, Pantheon is still here, but it's just, there's no way. They do not have time. As a Drake, once again, what's that, the 4th objective that has just kind of fallen, you know, to the side of SEF almost for free?
Yeah,
Gamer
I mean,
Destroyer.
Right.
Yeah, a little bit of trouble on the hunt. Gonna get popped. Cataclysm getting popped. That's 2 ultimates so far. Redemption coming down, trying to buy Gamer Destroyer a little at a time, but it's just not enough as Rich picks up a kill, and Ashe may actually be on the menu now. No, they do finally back off, so at least some of the bleeding's stopping, but I'm not sure what Dr. Mundo is doing. Why are you there, my friend?
Yeah, I mean, Mundo does go where he pleases, but Senpapi Sabi, I really don't know what it is that he wants, right? You know, it's a matter of figuring out what exactly the Mundo is going to be doing. And there it is, 30 minutes in, we are finally going to be seeing that Spirit Visage getting ever so closer to completion. I would have loved to see it as a first item into the Aurora, but, you know, who cares about that? This is not laning phase. This is your base getting taken. GCS in a ton of trouble right now. The biggest thing is your team doesn't scale nearly as hard as SEF, but it could be terrifying in the right position. You need to find that one flank. You need to find that one opportunity. But despite having the Enchanted Crystal Arrow, it is not GCS who are the ones pulling the trigger.
Absolutely, and I think we've reached sort of the awkward stage of the game. There's no objectives yet for them to fight over. They can do a bit of pushing, but it's very hard. Most it looks like all of the T1s are down at this point, so there's no, I want to say in quotation marks, safe towers to go for. Sivir is going to continue pushing that, but this can easily turn on its head, and they need to watch out for it. Granted, if they die, they will have plenty of opportunities. Dr. Mundo going to get caught out. Absolutely, Senpapi Sabi trying to find an angle there on Dark Fr3nzy. Braum buying plenty of time. The passive going to come out. Pantheon coming there in the background, but unfortunately, his ultimate's not going to be able to hit too much, as Brav is sort of left here to pick up the pieces. Stratty time trying to look for the stuns, but Dr. Mundo is finally a beefcake to deal with. Flag and Drag can find an angle, but the Cataclysm is going to reverse move and go on top of the Ashe. Ashe going to get targeted, going to get taken down. Aurora doing so much damage, followed into Stratty time. This could still go either way. Rise looking for an angle. He does have an ultimate out and ready to go, able to pick up some damage. This is truly a back and forward, but I've got to worry about here on the other side is double stun comes in from Mel, buying themselves some more time, and that's actually going to be an even trade, which I've got to say favors Sivir.
Yeah, I mean, once again, it's all about that Sivir just able to free hit, able to do as much damage as possible. And Senpapi Sabi got so close to actually taking out Strategy Time, to actually taking out Dark Frenzy. That is without the Spirit Visage just yet. But most importantly, Dark Frenzy does not have that Executioner's Calling yet. If this Sivir picks up that Executioner's Calling, this will be a massive swing in the way how these fights are working out. There's only one person on the enemy team who does have any healing reduction, and that is going to be Baratel with that Oblivion Orb. But as we continue throughout this game, it's going to be getting harder and harder for Mundo to actually play. We're going to get that Titanic Hydra coming up soon, though, and we're going to get to the point, like I was saying, it's going to be harder and harder for Mundo to play. That being said, Mundo also has a 6-item power spike, right? You know, Sivir, one of those champions that is unbelievable at 6 items, but if you leave Mundo alone for long enough, he's going to be a problem. Right, 238 stacks on that Heartsteel. Imagine that Heartsteel with a Titanic Hydra, with an Overlord's Bloodmail, with so much health under his belt. Senpapi Sabi just always going to be a problem.
Brav getting a little bit too close there, at least for my blood pressure. And something I want to say at this point is you have both Rise and Mundo, people who are really good into side lanes, really good in pushing. Rise has so much escapability, and I would love to see them do that and pressure more of these T2s. I do think that is why they're up on the towers, but you have to answer Dr. Mundo. Dr. Mundo has a lot of escapability. You have to answer Bubbles on Rise, and I would love to see that, but I think we did talk in the background how at this ELO it is a little scary to do a 3-1-1 and a little bit harder to pull off, so I don't necessarily blame them, but it would be nice to see at least one of them going for it. Senpapi Sabi going to try to find, looks like absolutely nothing as he throws his briefcase, not able to hit too many people. Aurora is doing the side lane things on her side, pushing a little bit faster than Rise, as Rise finally going to get a little bit of rotating over here as Brav does find a passive there on the side. Senpapi Sabi going to go in, the Redemption coming down, buying himself plenty of time, but it looks like it was ultimately not super helpful, but it didn't matter because Brav going to get taken down, isolated, and destroyed, follows shortly behind Mel. Rich going to go in, but I think he's only going to deliver himself into the jaws of defeat. That Cataclysm once again works both ways. It's a double-edged arena, and I think Rich is learning the lesson of that, as we've got 6 seconds on the clock for the next Drake, and I think Nasher as well.
Oh, but hold on,
Nasher,
take a look at this backline. Baratel.
Aurora
Baratel able to take
down. Absolutely, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, Baratel able to take down Strand means that this Baron is so much slower. It's far from unhealthy because you do still have Gamer Destroyer able to keep that shield up there, and Baratel going to get chased out by Senpapi Sabi. In the meantime, Dark Frenzy going to be able to pick up the full-on soul in return. At the very least, you are not ever going to be dealing with a Chemtech Soul Mundo, but at the very least, Purple Worm, something that is very powerful, very scary as this game does go on. And let's take a look at the way how that last team fight started, right? It was Senpapi Sabi popping ult and just running straight forward, right? We like to joke about how Mundo does as he pleases, but in the end, it's very difficult to get away from a Mundo with this much move speed, with this much health, with this much damage, if you don't have Cataclysm available, right? That's the reason why Jarvan's so good into champions like Mundo, because you just pop the Cataclysm, you flag and drag away, and there's very little that he can do to actually get out of it unless he's burning Flash. And in the meantime, Bubbles could be in a ton of trouble here.
Fairytale going to go in. They're going to run a little bit of a 1-2 punch as the flag and drag comes in, and Bubbles gets taken down. The further and further this game goes, despite all of the losses, SEF has got to be feeling great here. We've got plenty of wave clear. However, it looks like the T2 is finally going to die in the mid lane. Rich going to have to go over the wall to watch out for a lot of the scariness on this side. And at this point, I'm not sure what GCS is doing. They need to back off. There's a lot of different amount of damage as Cataclysm comes in there on the background. 2 flashes in order to avoid it. Rich taking a good chunk of damage, but ultimately the number advantage is just too powerful, and Sivir has such the wallet to go on the hunt. Gonna get popped. It looks like Gamer Destroyer is the only one left over here to pick up all the pieces, and they're gonna get isolated, destroyed, and that's gonna be an ace, and this might be the end of game number 2.
Yeah, and let's take a look at this one more time. It was just an engage directly into that mid lane, but just like that, Fr3nzy standing still, auto-attacking, able to just get so much damage onto that front line. Stran and Gamer Destroyer trying to make something happen in that back line. Unfortunately, not going to be able to output the damage needed. And look at the Nexus. They fall. The Nexus towers fall one by one as just like that, with the pick onto Bubbles at the beginning of the fight, the pick onto the Bubbles at the end of the fight. The Rise cannot do enough. Summit Esports Frenzy will not be denied a game number 3.
Absolutely. And the big thing though too is I've got to wonder, and this is kind of turning into the mantra for this game, is why were they there, right? They knew the number advantage was the other side. They just saw a gank on Rise and they're like, you know what, now's our time to team fight after we're down a member. So I don't know what the plan was for that. They're probably gonna be kicking themselves more on their end than on my end. Bit of shenanigans, but do you have any final thoughts here, Auntie, before we head off to break?
I mean, honestly, these are the kind of games we live for, right? You know, the games where we see things just happening, right? There might not be a rhyme or reason behind some of them, but at the very end, that's what we love to see, right? We love to see these players having the time of their lives, just going crazy with it, trying to make something happy. And I believe at the very least for me and Korak, we got to see Mundo lose. So pretty happy about that. Please do your research on this champion. There's a lot of ways that you need to do in order to make him as powerful as you do see in some of those highlight reels. That being said, we're going to see how powerful of a pick both teams have in store for us in game number 3. So don't go anywhere as we come back real quick.
We are down to the wire here, Ante, moving into game number 3. The score is tied up 1-1, and devastating games back-to-back. Hopefully, game number 3, draft number 3, will be just as exciting, Ante. Or stressful, depending on how you're looking at it.
I am stressed the hell out. I mean, I'm looking at some of these fights, I'm looking at some of these games, and I have to analyze these things, right? Like, a lot of the time I'm sitting there, I'm just like, okay, well, theoretically, this should happen. Theoretically, that should happen. I really don't know. A lot of the times it feels like these teams kind of run at each other when they say, you know what? I think this is a good fight. I think we should go for it. And they're ignoring, hey, we're 4v5, or they're ignoring, hey, the enemy team has a scaling bot lane, et cetera, et cetera. And sometimes it works out, right? It's coin flip after coin flip after coin flip. And don't get me wrong, I love coin flipping, right? I love gacha games. I love going for these crazy little fun moments. But when it comes to a competitive match of League of Legends, you're bound to run into some times where you really wish that that coin did not flip in that direction. But in the end, we're going to have to see what does happen between GCS and SEF. Cream Corn versus the Fr3nzy here. I mean, I don't know. It's bound to be a banger of a game 3. I would love it to be as bloody as game number 2, because game number 1, I think, probably took a lot out of people mentally, right? Game number 2 certainly took a lot out of people mentally. Game number 3 is where we're going to start seeing just how much mental fortitude these players have built up at the beginning of the season.
Well, and the other thing to remember too, this is fearless, right? And it's not like these are diamond plus players for the most part.
Oh yeah.
So they've got a little bit more of a limited pool, which means we get in the realm and the territory that I like, which is the realm of the weird. And I always love to see it, even if it doesn't work. I've seen a lot of weird stuff going into game number 3s from teams exactly like this. I'm excited for it. I've seen a lot of weird stuff that I'm very mad worked, and you know, going forward. And I'm hoping we'll get a little bit of those shenanigans, but you know, keep in mind what we've had, 20 champions so far. Yeah, because 10 and 10, I can do math kind of, and then we're gonna have an additional 10 on top of that, so you know, 30. So there's gonna be 30 champions off the pool, and that's quite the big ask. And honestly, at this point, if you've got someone who you think is a problem, 5-man ban them. I don't care. Yeah. It's literally a strategy. Like 100%. If you think it'll win you the game, do it.
Yeah, honestly, my biggest thing here is please pick your own comfort. Like, pick something that you are comfortable with, that you built up on your own, that you picked, not because you say, oh, well, I saw this one person think it's strong, or, oh, you know, I was told to pick this thing up. Pick something that you are comfortable with, something that you can make your own, something that if you're sitting there, gun to your head, being told, I need you to rely on this champion to win this game, or we, you know, take your puppy away or something like that, right? You know, something that's worth more than your life. This is when you bring it out. Game number 3, back against the wall. You have to seal the deal here.
Absolutely. And this game number 3 is where I've seen a lot of the weird before. I'm hoping we don't get this. I hope and pray we don't get this, but there's a team I've been covering in a league. I believe it was Ember specifically. And one of their favorite junglers is Kayn. And I'm sure a lot of people have a lot of opinions on Kayn jungle. And the frustrating thing about it is sometimes it works. And I still hated it. I hated it when it was losing. I hated it when it was winning. But still, you know, there's plenty of opportunities for weird. I would take it over a Yuumi any day, you know, in any lane whatsoever. I mean, maybe Yuumi mid I might enjoy more because at least they're doing something. But, you know, I really hope we at least get to see some of the weird, as long as it's not like Kayn or Yuumi, in my opinion.
I mean, I don't know. We're going to have to see what exactly it does turn into. I will say, I actually am a little bit of a fan of Kayn if the teams understand how to play around it. And what we have seen time and time again between these two teams, between this division as a whole, is difficult to execute team comps are difficult to execute, right? I mean, it should be a pretty straightforward statement, and it should be a pretty easy to understand thing. But so much of the time, these teams will sit there and think to themselves, oh, well, I mean, it's hard to execute, but we're built different, right? Like we got that. And
we're the exception.
Yeah, but don't get me wrong. I love y'all. I love watching you play. I love the choices that you're making. You're not the exception. Difficult to execute. Team compositions are difficult to execute. And if you are going to pick them, I better at the very least see you attempting to play towards those win conditions. The biggest thing that these teams are struggling with right now is they are not actively choosing to play to their win conditions and instead choosing to play to what they feel is best in the moment, right? And you can't get carried away by that flow here. But there's so many champions already taken off the table. We're going to be keeping these bans relatively similar. I'm expecting the Jinx and the Caitlyn bans on the side of SEF. No long-range AD carries available now that Ashe is also off the table. We're going to have to see just how this works out.
Absolutely, and a lot of standard bans coming out. The Deer is a lot scarier than I think people give her credit for, and when she does pop off, she's very, very frightening, so I'm not surprised by that. Wukong meta pick, you know, Jax, very, very prominent, hard to deal with, and the same thing for the other side. You got Caitlyn, Jinx, Ornn, all very, very solid picks. This first pick is going to be really, really important. Please don't pick like a Cho'Gath or a Moon. Okay, MF, this is a good starter pick. I like this. MF has a lot of versatility and a lot of escape. She can be countered, but I do like this for a first pick.
Braum is off the table. I actually really like the MF pick when Braum is off the table here. Echo going to be picked up. That is definitely a champion that people are picking if it's their own comfort pick. So at the very least, we are going with that kind of idea there. We're going to be taking Karma off the table. I think this is more of a takeaway rather than a direct counter pick. Yes, you can get that Mantra Inspire off to make sure that they're not going to be dealing with the full brunt of that bullet time, but the Smolder pick here actually a little bit interesting because, you know, you lose out on the ability to go for that Smolder flex pick. So there's a direct call out saying, all right, we already know this is strategy times Echo. We already know that this is going to be going directly into that mid lane. Skarner picked up here. We're getting some beefcakes for these marksmen.
I do gotta say I'm a little worried about the Skarner. Skarner is very, very powerful, but my problem with it is Skarner does have a deceptively high skill floor. Knowing exactly when and where and how to go into those locations is so important. He's not as bad as Aphelios when it comes to that level of chess, but it is something to watch out for. I'm not saying he's impossible to use over here, but I do think he's a little bit harder of a champion than people give him credit for, and people get in trouble with it, in my opinion.
Yeah, and one thing I will also say, right? I think that Echo is going directly into the jungle because that Yone feels like it's a direct pick against the Skarner. Sorry, not the Skarner. Oh my goodness. Imagine the Yone jungle coming in all hot. But the direct pick into that Smolder. So I am expecting to see a top lane pick here. I mean, okay, you know what? I know I said just go for whatever it is you feel you're most comfortable with, but as someone who has enjoyed Vayne quite a bit over the years, I don't get it. I do not see what Vayne brings to this team composition outside of damage that many other AD carries would also bring in a much safer position, but here we go. Grag is going to be the one rounding out that top side. And what exactly are we going to have here? The Nautilus. Okay. All right. So I think that's the Karma mid, Yone top, Echo jungle. So that definitely makes things very interesting. All right. You know what? I don't even care anymore. My prediction just going straight out the window. I'm not even going to say who I think is going to win this game.
So I'm going to go with it here. I think this is... No, it's on Brav. I was going to say that there's an angle here for this to be Nautilus jungle. Nautilus jungle is still pretty decent right now. I don't believe he took any nerfs or anything like that. So that was an angle, but it does look like Brav is on it. So we've got the traditional, you know, 1-2 punch down there. And then we've got the jungle Echo, and then we've got the Karma top. Karma top can work, especially if she goes in a little bit of beef angle, but I'm worried about her into Gragas because Karma wants to get that poke down, and Gragas has a lot of sustain. He's very, very beefy. He's got a lot to deal with. He can get out of Karma's abilities. I just don't think Karma is good into specifically Gragas. Maybe like someone like Dr. Mundo, maybe, but I don't know.
I mean, I will say that Karma was picked relatively early on into that draft, if I remember correctly. Right, so it was something where they said, all right, we're just going to stick it in the top lane. We should be fine no matter what. Senpapi has had a lot of trouble dealing with Baratel's mages in that top lane. And one thing I will note, right now, I don't think this is going to happen. I do think that what is going to happen is Baratel is going to go for a build that will break my heart, but if Karma is going the defensive build, right? If Karma is going with that Moon Core, you know, then it will be very, very interesting to see what this does turn into once you have the Exodia composition actually put together. Now, that being said, every single solo lane Karma just goes Malignance. I don't like it. I think it's bad. They always go for it, but we'll have to see what this does turn into, as you know, Karma does do a decent amount of damage in that early game, and if you can get farmed up at the very least, you should be very, very difficult to gank with a Skarner, with a Gragas. I mean, those are two champions that against most of the cast should have a very good gank setup, but against Karma, I'd argue it's pretty dang difficult.
When we were talking in the background how powerful Karma can be, and I do think it is something to watch out as a point of contention. I think something we also need to keep an eye on too is Maokai, right? And I'm not bashing on Maokai. I'm a really big fan of specifically support Maokai. I think he can be very, very powerful. But people need to learn how to turn, as in when your abilities and cooldowns are down and you've already popped your passive, you need to get out of there because you are not Alistair, you are not Leona, you are not Rel. You're going to take a massively insane amount of damage, especially into someone like Nautilus, especially into someone like Vayne. That's so scary to watch out for. MF can't help and buy time, but you know, I think a lot of the early game pressure is going to be here on the side of SEF onto GCS because Smolder's going to take a while to come online, and you really need to wait for that level 6 on Maokai. And I just don't think they have the damage in bot lane, you know, with Maokai going in, because he's going to go in and he's going to take a massive amount of damage. He's going to pick up stuns. Vayne can condemn him in the wall. There's just so much to watch out for. And then speaking of watching out for, you know, the thing about Yone is kind of like the Blitzcrank of mid, right? Where you can do terrible most of the game, but you get one or two really good ults and the game can just be over.
Yeah, I mean, that's absolutely true. But one thing I will say is a little bit concerning here is Fr3nzy has the first strike on the Misfortune, which, don't get me wrong, I love a first strike Misfortune in the positions where it makes a lot of sense, right? But oh, okay, we're getting a few good trades in that bot lane, exactly as we were mentioning it. First strike paying off dividends already. But one of the big things about it, right, is that a lot of Misfortunes nowadays are picking up the Bloodthirster first item. You can max your W early, you can get a ton of damage off with that, and always have your strut passive available. Now, first strike usually ends up meaning that you are building the lethality early. So if you are going for the Bloodthirster, you usually want the press the attack. If you are going for the lethality, you are taking that first strike, and that is a lot of confidence if you are going that first strike, right? I mean, there's an Echo, there's a Yone, there's champions that will absolutely dive the backline and make your life a living hell once you get past that early laning phase. First strike feels great in the early laning phase, especially against a low range AD carry like Vayne. Now, I'm really worried to see what this does turn into as we get into the later stages of the game. But in the end, Strategy Time taking a ton of damage in that mid lane. I mean, Yone should be the counter pick for Smolder, right? As we have seen time and time again, but it's definitely a tough position to find yourself in a lot.
Absolutely, and Shreddy Time is learning one of the issues here with Yone as the first blood already falls to the side of Smolder. Once again, the carries getting fed, the scaling champions getting fed are not what you want to see as Baratel almost takes out the Gragas already. Lots of back and forward already for sure, but I think Yone is learning one of the classic issues is being melee into range a lot of times sucks, even if it's a Smolder. Baratel looking for an angle there on Gragas. Gonna pop down the empowered Q, but unfortunately it's just not gonna be enough as they take more tower shots. At the very least, they did delay the backing of Gragas.
Yeah, and they're just gonna continue to delay this. And Papi Sabi has enough mana for 1 Q, 1 E, literally just one potential option here. Now with a level up in a decent enough position to survive and pick up the experience under the tower. But at the very least, you know, Baratel wants to try to keep this Gragas here as long as possible, so that way he can pick up the plate, that way he can pick up the dive threat, at the very least pick up as much health off of that Gragas as possible.
Finally, Bubbles taking a little bit of damage into Stratty Time, but has to back off immediately, waiting for more of his kit to come back online as we get a fight over in bottom. It looks like Maokai may have gone in at some point, or Nautilus. Hard to tell, but Dark Frenzy is already down to like, what, 200 HP? Yeah, 200 HP, and having to absolutely continue to thread those needles. This bot lane is not going the way that I expected, but, you know, as long as Vayne doesn't die and is able to keep up slightly on the CS, she's got to be happy with these trades. She's got to be happy with a farm lane as she takes another Q directly to the face, going back down to 200 HP.
Yeah, I mean, I gotta say, I think that's a Q max misfortune, right? So this might very well be a lethality misfortune, which once again, as I've said before, very, very good in the laning phase. Feels phenomenal in the early game. If you can trust your team enough to make sure that you never ever again end up getting engaged on, it's phenomenal. It's just, once you have the Echo diving you, once you have the Yone diving you, it becomes much more difficult to just rely on your ultimate.
Absolutely. And we're getting some downtime over here for Skarner. Oberon is here in the bot lane looking for an angle. Maokai going to go in, going to find a Q, but unfortunately is going to knock Dark Frenzy in the wrong direction. Rich coming in, looking for the stun there on Gamer Destroyer, but just not able to grab it as Oberon is here. Vayne should have to back, and this objective, I think, should fall to the side of GCF if Skarner does not get caught inside his own jungle.
Yeah, I mean, right now, Rich and Stratty Time both moving into this jungle, trying to make sure that Oberon doesn't have a chance to play the game. But Skarner just going to continue to walk around that jungle and be very, very happy with how things are going. Top lane's continuing to be suffering for Sen Papi Sabi, and this time on a Gragas that will at the very least be useful the later the game goes, but is not the same kind of insane scaling that Sion had, not the same kind of late game reliability that Mundo had. It's a champion that does in fact still need those minions in order to survive, and that's 10 CS down less than 10 minutes in.
Absolutely. And I think how these fights are going to boil down is GCS really wants to, you know, once again, mash all their G.I. Joes, press all their buttons together, and just do an insane amount of damage. And then at that point, they need to back off. I think the team fight, the sustain potential is much, much higher on SEF. And I think the team fighting potential in general in SEF is very, very powerful. As long as Smolder doesn't get ultra fed, I'm really worried about GCS in these team fight phases.
Yeah, I mean, at the very least, right? Smolder not getting ultra fed seems to be something that a lot of people try to play around, but Bubbles is in a very, very good position here. That early kill, that early amount of CS, I wouldn't call it a lead at this point, but you know, this is going to be a wave shoved in.
Oh boy, on Dark is indeed going to find it. The knockup is so powerful. Twisted Advance is such a great ability as Exhaust comes down and Smolder drags Vayne over to her death as she gets destroyed, followed shortly behind Bravado as they get taken down, and the feats of warfare are already going to fall to the side of GCF. Maokai putting in a lot of work, showing how powerful of a champion he can be, finding his voice in this game number 3 here.
Yeah, and just like that, Korak, finally, now in game number 3, we are seeing some real true punishes on these summoner being blown, right? That worked because there was no cleanse on Dark Frenzy. There might have been a flash available, but when you're that low, that close to the tower, how are you going to flash out of that impale? How are you going to be dealing with that? Baratel might be having a good time in this top lane, but 2 more kills on a Misfortune that's going lethality is so unbelievably strong here. We're going to get to the point where Fr3nzy is going to walk into that bot lane, land 1 Q, and Dark Frenzy is going to lose half of his health, right? This is a Blade of the Ruin King Vayne that we are seeing here, but this Misfortune is never going to stop hurting.
Absolutely, and Misfortune is another one of those ADCs where it feels like her ultimate is always up for every fight. I think it's a pretty generous timer, in my opinion. We are starting a little bit of a fight over here in jungle. Gamer Destroyer is not really using his saplings to his effect that I think he should be, and I think that's a mistake on Maokai. I can't complain about him too much because he's been able to help his team out so much. Objective going down, need to pop that plant. There it is. Dredge coming in. Nautilus looking for an angle, trying to lock them down. Gamer Destroyer is going to get destroyed as Yone goes in, able to find a massive ultimate. Rich going out and then back in. There comes Mother, going to get called down, knocking down the Nautilus. Bubbles over here to pick up plenty of the kills. This is not what they want. Smolder getting fed is going to be so devastating, and he's absolutely on the hunt. Bubbles taking a bunch of shots there by Baratel, having to back off, unfortunately for him, but he's picked up another kill. He's sitting at 3-0 on Smolder.
Yeah, and Smolder just like that, but yet another fight in that bot lane. Fr3nzy getting
Frenzy.
all in on.
Just one more AA, it's all you need, and they get it. Shut down. Finally, Vayne's got to be feeling happy for that. That should breathe some oxygen back in the lungs of the other side. Graga's going to find a way onto Baratel, but Karma is so frustrating to deal with, but not if you run directly back into it. Gragas just needs one more AA, and frustratingly, Baratel is just sort of able to walk away doing Karma things.
Yeah, I mean, Baratel going to be able to slink on out of there. Oh my God, it's a lost chapter. Of course, it's going to be the Malignant spelled on Karma. Either way, so we are going to be having that AP Karma in that top lane. We are going to be having the damage Karma, which is going to get outscaled by the raw survivability coming in from Senpapi Sabi as the game continues. That being said, right, there's that one moment of weakness that we saw in that bot lane where Dark Frenzy had the ability to just go on in, chase down that Misfortune, and that's the struggle that I was talking about, right? If Misfortune does get inned on without something like the Bloodthirster being built up, it's very difficult to find yourself in a position where you can actually stay alive as long as possible. Fr3nzy could be in trouble here.
Looking for a dive on the bot lane. Maokai going to come in with Nature's Grasp, doing so much damage, knocking them directly into the tower as Bravo going to take a massive amount of damage. Yone coming in, finding a decent knock-up. Rich going back and forward. Nautilus going down there in the background. And Maokai and Misfortune still alive. Skarner coming in, looking for an angle, trying to lock them down. Is indeed going to find the Echo. That's going to be a double kill. Look at all that damage on Fr3nzy. Fr3nzy doing so much. Yone going in, able to knock out the other side. And that's a double kill on Vayne. But still, the fight going back and forward is Yone going back under tower, trying to find it out, but just not going to find it, and that's going to be a double kill on the Smolder. Bubbles is absolutely massive. 5-0 on Skarner with 12 minutes coming up on the clock.
Yeah, 5-0 on this Smolder. This is a nightmare for SEF here. Let's take a look at this one more time. Fr3nzy just holding onto this wave, saying, all right, we're just going to freeze this directly under the tower. It sees that W, sees that depth charge come through, flashes on in, does not have the ultimate available, but just autoing every single time that he can. Does manage to dodge out just barely each and every time, able just space those auto attacks, making sure to make use of that double up passive as much as possible. Oberon getting knocked back by the Impale, not quite able to stop Dark Frenzy from dashing in to hit that one auto left, but in the end, the Vayne cannot leave. The Yone soul is tethered directly under that tower, and Bubble is coming to take out the rest of SEF. A 5-0 Smolder 12 minutes into the game is unheard of.
Absolutely devastating. Look at all that damage. He just paid a quick visit to the other side. MF going to get locked down here by Bravado. One more stun should be coming up soon, but I think she's got plenty of opportunities to get out. The thing we got to watch out here, though, is Vayne, Maokai going back and forward. Oberon going to try to find their way in. Exhaust coming down on Baratel, locking down the Karma. Karma taking a good chunk of damage, but able to take her out would be a tall order. Nature's Grass going to come in. He should be able to get a decent knockback, buying them just a little bit more time to take it down. Shield coming down for Baratel. Baratel finally getting so close to going down, getting a stun there on the tree, but the tree returning it with a Q, grabbing a kill right before the Drake spawns.
Yeah,
and we got a shutdown.
Able to grab that, but a big shutdown onto Bubbles there. A game gonna be getting paused up, but I gotta say, shutdown onto the Smolder is exactly what you want to be looking at as SEF right now, right? You need that gold onto someone. You need that influx of the way that you can actually play the game, right? And once again, Baratel, I can't talk about this build, right? Malignance on the Karma, going to be able to output a lot of ability to use that mantra as quickly as possible. That being said, we're going to be getting a lot of AoE damage from that Karma. We're going to be getting a decent amount of AP damage from the Echo, especially after picking up a 5-kill shutdown. That's almost, 1,000 gold off of that kill, if I've done my math correctly. But most importantly, 27 more seconds before Smolder can come back up on the map, right? That is 3 champions on the side of SEF who are still looking for that Bork to be fully completed. But most importantly, that is even more damage onto this tower as the dragon goes down for SEF here. A very, very quick trade immediately going to be getting committed to.
The biggest thing I'm worried about for GCF here is, yes, they have a fed Smolder. Yes, they have a fed MF, but that's a good portion of their damage. That's where the majority of the gold on their team is, on both Smolder and on MF, which means that they are now prime targets for Echo. They are prime targets for Yone. They are prime targets for Vayne to go in and just absolutely hammer them with damage. And that's one of the scary things about Vayne, is Vayne sort of just tumbling past everything while everybody just sort of peels for her and buys her time, and she's able to absolutely nuke people. If she gets in range of MF, MF's dead. If she gets in range of Smolder, Smolder's dead. And there's not a lot of ways around that unless Maokai is just absolutely on top of it, but he's only got so much of a kit. The biggest thing I'm worried about is Oberon. Speaking of being worried about, someone getting caught over here in jungle. Bubbles gonna get taken down by Rich inside his own jungle, unfortunately for him.
Yeah, I mean, definitely a position you don't want to be finding yourself in as this massive carry. And this is something that I was telling you about before, Korak, right? As an assassin player, as someone whose only job is to output damage, right? The one thing that you love to see on the enemy team is the enemy AD carry getting fed, is the enemy squishies getting fed, because no matter how fed they get, they are not getting tankier. Right, Oberon going to be slinking right on out. You've taken the chickens, you've left, but how much more are you going to be able to do with your Smolder, struggling to find a place on the map? Right now, going up to that top lane, Baratel not going to be able to provide the same kind of burst damage that Echo might be able to. And speaking of which, there's Nature's Grass
coming in, locking down Baratel, pushing him back. However, he's going to run directly into a Nautilus. Nautilus coming in. It is indeed clean. Mother going to get called down. Bullet time over the other side, but Rich is going to go for the ADC. This is exactly what we're talking about. You have to worry about these assassins, and Echo, I think, qualifies. Going to take down the Maokai. Maokai going to get destroyed. Dreaded time. Going to go in, absolutely mopping people up. It doesn't matter how fed you are if you're isolated, and there's just so much engage here by SEF. SEF has got to be loving this. These squishies getting fed, buying them plenty of time. Oberon trying to buy himself some time, but he's run directly into Vayne. He may have tried to pull Vayne and pull him into a tower, but it doesn't matter because that's a Vayne directly in your face, and she's happy to be there, sitting at 4-2, and Echo picking up some nice kills for himself.
Yeah, and with that, that one Lichbane finally completed. Rich is just running all over these carries, running all over this Smolder, running all over this Misfortune. And this is exactly what I was warning about, right? When I saw that first strike Misfortune, I was so scared because you don't have the survivability. You don't have a way how to play into the enemy team without the ability to pick up that Bloodthirster, right? Without the ability to pick up those big defensive items that will allow you to just duke it out toe-to-toe, that will allow you to play that boxing strat. But in the end, Rich with the Echo just dives straight into the backline and says, I'm just going to remove your health bar, and that's the end of the story. There is no negotiation, there is no stopping me, there is only damage, there is only sepia filter.
Absolutely. All amazing points there, Anti. And I think something we need to watch out for is at this point, both Gragas, Oberon, and Gamer Destroyer on Maokai, they all need to be peeling for either the Smolder or for the MF, because if they don't, their backline is just going to get dove over and over and over and over. And their only way out is for, like, say, Bubbles to get fed and to pile it up. But it's such a tall order. This team is very, very assassin-y between the Vayne, between the Echo, between the Yone. There's so much to watch out for. And then you've got to also worry about Karma, and you've got to worry about Nautilus. That's a lot of stuns. It's a lot of locking people down. So even if they blow their stuns on, say, like the Skarner, that means Bubbles is open season, or Strad is open season for them to take out. I just don't like the odds here for GCF team comp wise.
Yeah, I mean, especially with, Baratel on that Karma looking to get tankier. I do believe that is a Thimble Winter that Baratel is actually building into here. So right now, we're seeing the result of this top lane, right? It's just going to be constant trades here, and Strand's just not getting to play the game.
Absolutely. Skarner coming in right there at the end, going to try to fight their way on Karma. Karma does have a lot to deal with him, and to try to fight back. Look at that health reach and the stun coming in, the damage coming in. A lot of back and forward here at Baratal as they absolutely turn the fight around. I was kind of worried about Skarner being a wet blanket, and I think it's happening here. He may have 8 in terms of KP, but I just don't think he's going to be able to do enough for his team. That skill floor is deceptively high for a lot of people. Not that he's strong, or not that he's weak or anything like that, but you got to know how to use him.
Yeah, and it's not even a matter of knowing how to use him. It's a matter of the fact that you have to rely on your team so heavily with a champion like Skarner, right? When you don't have the 2v1, when you don't have the 2v2, Skarner alone's really not going to be able to do nearly as much. At the very least, you're going to be able to drive directly into this mid tower, but instead we are going to be seeing the drift all the way into and past the top lane, as instead it's just going to be a drift for survival. In the end, it's not going to be looking anything like Han, but right now, we are just seeing Oberon continue to farm up, continue to try to be that frontliner that his team needs.
Speaking of frontliners, I'm kind of thinking of someone who is on the table who's not hard to pick up and would have been great for this combination over Skarner. I don't know if maybe I'm just hating on Skarner. Sorry, Captain Flowers. I'm just not a fan of him. The thing here is Sejuani. Sejuani would have been amazing for this team, for Skarner to go, and it's not like she's hard to pick up or to play, and she just would have provided this just absolutely frustrating front line for Bubbles, for Strand, in order to hide behind. We just don't see that, but, there's still plenty of time on the clock. There's an opportunity for Oberon to prove me wrong, and I hope they do. I'm always happy to be wrong on stream, especially when it comes to champion calls, so I'm hoping we get to see that here, but I'm just really worried here about GCS.
Yeah, I mean, I'd actually argue that I think Skarner is a much better pick than Sejuani in a game with double ranged, right? But yeah, I think it's so much more on the fact that we have the assassin. Look at this.
Going to lock down on Bubbles, just absolutely no damage. We do get a flash, so that's pretty good. Rich didn't have to blow a whole bunch in that engagement. However, Baratal might be overstaying their welcome. Going to run into a little bit of slow there by Strad, but I'm not sure they want this fight totally at all, as Gamer Destroyer position his way up, but if he's not careful, he could position his way directly into his own death. You've got to be using those saplings to your advantage, as Stratty time engaging back and forward here with Gragas. Gragas having to blow his ultimate, which is really unfortunate, but at the very least, he is alive. He doesn't have much of an impact. He's 0-2 in this game, 11-14 at a 21-minute game. So things could be better for Blue Side.
Yeah, it could be better, but we are seeing a good engage coming on through.
Oberon going in for the thing, able to take a good chunk of damage as Maokai follows up with an ultimate right into a really amazing bullet time. And Root also hits the TP as they go in. So Strategy Chime not able to follow that up. Not sure if that was intentional or if it's just how it worked out. They did pick up a kill, so they are going to use that to build a little bit of confidence and hopefully get their hands on some objectives, which unfortunately I don't believe are up right now.
Yeah, no objectives up right now, but at the very least, they saw the opportunity and they pulled the trigger. That's one of the problems that we were seeing from these teams earlier, right? Where there wasn't that big direction, that big trigger pull that we really wanted to see from these teams. So this time around, they're being decisive. They say, all right, you know what? We're falling behind. We need to find a way how to, either propel ourselves back into the game or slow things down so that we will be fine. We are able to see Strand actually make use of that bullet time. We are able to see that Impale land on multiple members. We're seeing Oberon just do so much work on the Skarner, sitting at 0, 2, and 9 out of these 12 kills on the team. And I mean, Bubbles honestly was just doing too good of a job in that early game. Try to make sure that his jungler didn't have 100% kill participation. And while that might have worked out, this Skarner is still doing a lot of work for this team. Strand, on the other hand, just needs to continue to find these really good plays where you're not just getting stopped every time that you do hit that bullet time, right? That you're not getting taken away from the enemy team. In the end, if the engage goes through, this Misfortune is terrifying.
Absolutely, and I definitely agree with that point. And we can't count Nautilus out, right? Nautilus, it may be 0 and 5, but at the end of the day, he is still a Nautilus. That depth charge could do a lot of work, especially if it's timed correctly, especially if you're setting it up there for Bubbles. And for the most part, when it comes to tank junglers, it doesn't really matter if they die. However, this time it might actually matter. Nature's Grass going to come in. Mother going to get called out. The flash coming there for Verano. Might actually be able to get out. And yes, indeedy, a bunch of ults down, and somehow Nautilus is able to walk away with all of his teeth in his skull.
Yeah, Mother came through, but nobody is grounded. In the meantime, this Otacon is looking mighty juicy for the side of GCS. Now, the wave isn't exactly in the greatest of positions here, so SCF certainly knows that this is happening, but they're actually not going to contest it. Dragon coming up in 10 seconds. Otacon might be able to provide a good amount of experience, a good amount of adaptive force, but 1 point away from Soul is something that you cannot scoff at. In the meantime, Oberon looking to walk down over to this dragon as quickly as possible. They're trying to find a way to stop them, but Fr3nzy and Bravo going to be able to keep them at bay, to keep the entirety of GCS from contesting this. And that's 1 dragon away from Infernal Soul on a team with backline diving assassins.
Absolutely. Vayne sitting at 5 and 2 is going to be really scary. Echo also at 5 and 2. Yone not doing too bad. He's not going for the 10 death power strike. However, Oberon being in a little bit of trouble, might be looking for his 3rd death. Going over the wall, can run directly into a plant. He's just got to hit it. Can he get it? No, he's going to get condemned directly into the wall. Flash over the other side as Vayne does the exact same thing. Dodging, weaving, and able to pick up a kill with the help of Rich coming in. The TP for Baratal coming in as well. And now Nashor is on the map, and they do not have the numbers, I think, to contest here. GCS, that is.
Yeah, and just like that, also watch, the depth charge is available. Strand right now, though, is so important. If that Misfortune can get that ulti off.
There it is. Nature's Grass trying to lock plenty of people down. Yone going back in and out. Nashor getting so close to going down. The fight has begun. Exhaust coming down on Rich. Echo going to go back there on the other side. Bullet time doing a good chunk of damage, and the race is on. The hunt is on. Can they get them? If they will, that'll completely nullify the Baron buff, but they're just not able to get in range. Rich was out, but he went back in. Zonya's gonna get popped. Strategy Time does have an angle. Nautilus or Maokai does go in. Gonna get taken down there by MF. A good amount of damage back and forward as Fr3nzy is unable to get as close as they want to. Bravo gonna run directly into a hook and into Fr3nzy. It was a good idea, but I think they overcommitted there, Auntie.
Yeah, and just like that, we saw so much chasing, so much blood in their eyes. The dollar signs were just ringing in their ears, and they said, all right, if we can pick these up, we can take the Baron out, we can take so much more off of this. But Rich constantly throwing back that time winder, and it just goes straight through the team on repeat. So much damage was taken as they chase after that Echo, and while Rich does end up going down in the end, that's Baron down. That's a full ace on the side of GCS, and SEF are in such a good position here. Summit Esports Fr3nzy are playing so unbelievably well to their win condition, which thankfully for them, very straightforward. It's just kill the squishies and you win. The squishies die, and all of a sudden Summit Esports Fr3nzy managed to just take every team fight known to mankind.
Absolutely, Auntie. And we were talking about our frustrations, both in between games and during games, where we just wanted these teams to play to their strengths. So it's so nice to see that finally happening. But I don't think we can make this sole point a foregone conclusion. If Maokai is able to get there on time, he needs to be using his saplings in a defensive, in a warding manner. And they're so powerful, and they're just such a great tool because it's a long distance warding ability, and it'll provide you plenty of time plus the slow. But he's got to get them down, and he's got to get them down frequently. We've got a minute and 30 seconds on the clock as the vision war has begun on the other side. Bubbles walking in, maybe trying to be a little bit of a pest over here. Skarner going to go in the other side. Oberon going to run directly into Rich. Rich falling back to the safety of the tower. Now the jig is up as Yone continues to push the top lane. He does have TP out and ready to go, and we still have a minute on the clock before this Drake even spawns.
Yeah, I mean, Senpapi Sabi going to be recalling, going to be looking to counter push that Yone, but this is a Yone with, you know, so much of the team behind him, a Yone with the Baron as well, and just like that, tower goes down. Senpapi Sabi cannot commit to this one, and Rich is left alone with that Dragon Soul coming up in 50 seconds, and a big fight might be starting up on that top lane, but at the very least, a big all in is looking to come through if Rich can work out this plan.
Sounds like Smolder has hit his execution stack. Go ahead.
Yeah, Smolder at 251 stacks. I mean, we've seen the execution come through at that Baron fight, but it is so big how Smolder continues to ramp up even more damage the later this game goes. You have to remember, the reason why you're focusing down these squishies is because they're very important, and there's one of them.
Oh, the fight has started. Dredgeline going to come down. Mother going to get called in, but unfortunately, it's not when they're at the lowest HP. Baratal absolutely uncontested, going to find the stun directly in to Stratty time. That's a double kill on the Karma, leaving only Maokai left to pick up the pieces. He's got to get out of here. Where is the Skarner? Skarner, Oberon is over on the other side. He can maybe stop this Drake, but I think it'll cost him the game if he dies here.
Yeah, it'll cost him the game, but at this point, with the Infernal Soul on double backline diving champions, what are you going to do? Baratel with that Karma able to just slow up that front line, and in the meantime, Fr3nzy able to do so much damage to the non-squishies with that Vayne, and a team with this much damage is so unbelievably hard to deal with when you don't have nearly enough peel.
Bullet time going to come down, at least pushing the Nautilus out of that and buying them a little more time, as we're going to get Vayne over here trying to lock it down. Is getting really close to that, but Oberon quickly on their heels as Vayne goes over the side. The tower goes down, so they did get what they wanted. Now Rich is on the menu, but I don't think you want to chase this team. However, Red Side really needs to reset, and look at the gold, about a 7K difference between each side.
I mean, you can see just how much damage these champions are putting out there. And experimental hexplay on the Vayne, honestly, love that choice there, especially as you're building into that Wit's End once again. Every single time that this Vayne pops that ulti, you know, that final hour makes Fr3nzy so unbelievably powerful here. But with a fully completed Infernal Soul, you've never had to worry about damage on Vayne, but now you're not even losing out on any damage. is just so
Absolutely.
unbelievably good for the side of Summit Esports Frenzy here, as they continue to walk forward with this gold lead, as they continue to push as much as they can, as they continue to make sure that these, you know, squishy carries don't have a chance to actually play the game, right? Smolder was 5-0.
Okay, Nasher starting, so about half HP. MF does have an angle, but she does not have her bullet time here ready for this fight. Strategy time going to come in, but they're going to get called down, doing at least a decent amount of damage. Oberon pushing the support directly into the engagement, and it looks like Echo is able to pick up Baron, and this is the final fight here for this game. Whoever wins this, I think, does win the game. Gragas going to go forward, going to get absolutely isolated. Dark Fr3nzy able to do a good amount of damage. Bullet time actually taking them down. Nice back and forward. Baratal going to come down, and it's all for naught, as that's a double kill on the Yone. You cannot forget about him as he TPs down there. Baratal going for the push. Stratty time going for the push. And I think this is the end of our best of 3 today.
Yeah, and just like that, it started with a bang, it ends with way more bangs. Strategy time ignored in that final fight. And on what planet are you ever allowed to ignore the Infernal Soul Yone? That bullet time finally came through for Strand, but it wasn't nearly enough. It's going to be Summit Esports Frenzy taking it all in game number 3. GCS Cream Corn, not the victors. It is going to be Summit Esports Frenzy taking it all home. We played it to what we expected, the scripted conclusion, but what better way to turn a conclusion on its head than double backline diving?
Absolutely, and it worked out so well for Summit Esports Frenzy, and just what a great game. What is this, week number 2, week number 3, you know, and it sounds like, you know, we've had a couple of bangers here and there, and I've been excited to join y'all for this one. I'm glad I was here. We went all the way to best of 3, so much damage, so much gold back and forward. I got to see Vayne popping off, which is something I haven't seen in quite some time. Vayne used to be this super crazy hyper carry, and she can still sort of get there, but it's just, you don't see it quite as often. So I'm excited. I feel like we've gone back in time just a little bit to some of the foregone seasons, but either way, what a phenomenal game. I've been so excited here and to hear for this. Do you have any final thoughts before we close ourselves out?
I mean, there's so many thoughts racing through my head, Korak, but either way, all I had to say is I can't believe that it's finally over. Right? This was a banger and a half of a series. We're 3 weeks into the season. And for those of you who are just tuning in to us right now, just remember this banger of a series was week number 3 of Divinity League. And we have matches every single day of the week as we lead into our final. So make sure not to miss any of those from Titan Esports, but we will be here with Divinity once more next week. So make sure to tune into everything, and thank you all for tuning in tonight.
See you.
Yeah.